Chapter 4075. However, they did not know if Mo Yunjue would perform as well as before. However, just as Xiren and the others were guessing, Mo Yunjue turned into a cloud of black smoke and disappeared from their sight. Seeing this, Xiren and the others were stunned. It seemed that their previous judgment was right. Mo Yunjue was also a first-rate cultivation genius. This level of comprehension was not something an ordinary person could compare to. Just as Mo Yunjue disappeared, Li Boyo's figure also disappeared. At the sight of this, the cultivators from the Crimson Moon sect revealed a smile on their faces. Previously, the new disciples of Penglai Palace had stolen the limelight, and they were very unhappy. Now that Li Boyo had entered the main hall before Wan Yinling, it had undoubtedly helped them regain some face. However, just as Li Boyo disappeared, Wan Yinling's figure also disappeared. In comparison, the cultivators of 100 Flowers Gate were still slightly inferior. Next, the cultivators entered the main hall one by one. Bai Yingtian of 100 Flowers Gate entered right after Wan Yinling. After all, although the pattern was very difficult to piece together, as long as one had enough patience and a bit of comprehension, one could still succeed. If one really did not feel anything about the pattern, one would not be able to succeed. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichan were cultivating inside, they noticed cultivators appearing one after another in the main hall. Seeing this, the two of them could not help but look at each other. As expected, the other cultivators had also entered after spending some time. Everyone noticed the existence of the black pool the moment they entered. They did not pay any attention to the coffin behind it. The moment Li Boyo saw the black pool, he knew that it must be something good. He immediately wanted to enter the black pool. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichan could not help but look at each other. They were also curious. If they did not have the permission of the owner of the ruins, what would happen if they directly entered the black pool? However, just as Li Boyo was about to step into the black pool, there seemed to be an invisible restriction that bounced him back. He was unable to take even half a step forward. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang smirked. She had wanted to enter the black pool when she saw it, but she didn't do so in the end. It turned out that without the permission of the master of the ruins, one simply could not step into this black pool. Li Boyo was clearly stunned by this situation. He immediately extended his hand and tried to enter the black pool again. However, after touching it, he discovered that there was an invisible restriction on the black pool that prevented him from entering. What's going on? Could it be that this black pool can't be entered? Li Boyo couldn't help but frown as a trace of irritation appeared between his brows. He could tell at a glance that the energy in the black pool was a treasure, but it was such a treasure that he could only look at but not consume. This was too unbearable. Mo Yunjue and Wan Yinling also walked to Li Boyo's side. After trying the black pool, they discovered that everything was as expected. Could it be that this black pool can't be entered? Where did Bailey Hongzhuang and the others go? Chapter 4076. As Bai Yingtian's voice fell, the cultivators present also looked at each other. They didn't think of this before, but after Bai Yingtian's reminder, they reacted. Yeah, where did Bailey Hongzhuang and the others go? Could it be that there are other levels after this level, and they have already passed the next level? Bai Yingtian frowned. It was really hard to say what would happen in the ruins. No one knew what would happen in the end. Li Boyo's face was slightly cold. He wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, but he didn't succeed. If Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had already passed the next level, he naturally wouldn't be happy. Since we can't enter this black pool, the problem must be with this coffin. Li Boyo slowly walked towards the coffin. The other cultivators didn't stop near the black pool, but approached the coffin together. After all, there was only this black pool and the coffin in the entire hall. If the black pool didn't have any use, there was only one possibility left. However, after everyone walked near the coffin, they still didn't find anything. Could the problem be in this coffin? Li Boyo's eyes flashed with bright and curious light. The coffin lid had always been closed, so they didn't know what was inside. However, he felt that the owner of the ruin wouldn't really leave his corpse here. Hearing Li Boyo's words, Wan Yinling couldn't help but frown and said, This should be the owner of the ruin. Since we're here, it's too disrespectful to do this. I don't think so. Maybe the owner of the ruin deliberately put a coffin here to confuse us. Li Boyo obviously didn't care about what Wan Yinling said, and the expression on his face revealed a bit of conceit. This kind of thing is a test of one's ability and courage. I think it's very likely that there's something special here. After hearing Li Boyo's words, the other cultivators' expressions became a little complicated. If there were other mechanisms here, then they would definitely not think about this coffin. However, there was really no other discovery in this hall, so they felt very helpless. Li Boyo, why don't you try? Bai Yingtian raised his eyebrows. Although he also felt that this action was a bit inappropriate, it was still a possibility. Maybe the owner of this ruin had a different way of thinking from ordinary people, so he made this special arrangement. Hearing Bai Yingtian's words, Li Boyo couldn't help but frown. Do you mean to use me as a test subject? It's just that you have a lot of guts, so I'm letting you try. Bai Yingtian shrugged, as if saying, it's up to you whether you want to try or not. Compared to the other cultivators who were thinking about the coffin, Imo Yunjue obviously did not have such thoughts. However, he also had some doubts in his heart. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichan should be here and wouldn't go anywhere else. But why couldn't he see them here? Xiren and Shangwan Yingying expended a lot of effort to enter the main hall. Chapter 4077. Yunjue, what's the situation now? Why are there so many of them gathered here? When Xiren walked to Mo Yunjue's side with a puzzled look on his face. Where are Beichin and Hongzhuang? Why haven't I seen them? Mo Yunjue shook his head and said, I don't know where they are. I saw this situation as soon as I came in, but I didn't see them. Now, everyone is looking for the inheritance. Hearing this, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying finally understood. So that's how it is. Shangwan Yingying suddenly understood. Beichin and Hongzhuang are so smart. Maybe they have already found the inheritance of this ruin. In my opinion, Li Boyo and the others are wasting so much effort. It's meaningless. No way. Li Boyo is planning to open the coffin? When Xiren could not help but exclaim in surprise when he heard the discussions of the crowd. A look of astonishment appeared on his face. This is too disrespectful to the owner of this ruin. If this is really the coffin of the owner of this ruin, won't he be angered to death? When Xiren only felt that it was inconceivable. Normal people would not do such a rude thing. Most ruins were built according to the owner's dying wish to continue their inheritance. Therefore, it was very likely that the body of the owner of this ruin was here. Usually, cultivators would be in awe here. How can anyone go so far? I also think that this Li Boyo is too daring. The things he does are somewhat incomprehensible. Shangwan Yingying frowned. She had long found Li Boyo an eyesore. Previously, he even wanted to kill them. If it were not for the fact that their team strength was not as good as Li Boyo's, she really wanted to send this guy to heaven. Let's not associate ourselves with them. Mo Yingying slowly said, whether the body of the owner of this ruin is here or not, as long as he knows about this, he will be very angry. According to Mo Yunjue's understanding, even if the owner of this ruin had passed away, he would often leave a remnant soul in this ruin. If someone did something he didn't like, he wouldn't let them off easily. Shangwan Yingying and Wen Xiren both nodded. In my opinion, we should apologize to the owner of the ruins first. If these people go too far and implicate us, it won't be good. All right. When Xiren and Mo Yunjue both agreed. They had come here to obtain the inheritance of the master of the ruins and increase their strength. They did not want to humiliate the master of the ruins. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichan had been paying attention to the situation in the hall, especially after hearing the conversation between Shangwan Yingying and the others. They couldn't help but smile. If it wasn't for Li Boyo's exaggerated actions, perhaps Shangwan Yingying and the other two wouldn't have such an idea. However, once they did so, then they would be able to enter the Black Pool, which was really good news. Looks like we have to thank Li Boyo for this. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Originally, she thought that their team was the weakest among the four teams. She didn't expect them to gain so much. Sure enough, after Shangwan Yingying and the others bowed to the master of the ruins, they disappeared from everyone's sight. Chapter 4078. It turned out that after the cultivator bowed to the owner of the ruins, they would disappear from the sight of others. This way, others would not understand how they disappeared. Mo Yunjue and the other two reacted just like Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen before. After knowing the owner of the ruins' request, they were very confused. However, in the end, they still did as he said. When they turned around, they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen in the black pool. Their faces were immediately filled with shock. As they walked into the black pool, Bailey Hongzhuang said in surprise, "You guys are in too. What's going on? I didn't see you guys in the black pool before." Shanghua Ningying was a little dumbfounded. Why was the scene completely different from before after she followed the owner of the ruins' instructions? This is the owner of the ruins' camouflage. Right now, we can see outside, but the people outside can't see us because there's a restriction in the black pool. Hearing this, Mo Yunjue and the other two finally understood. Their faces were filled with realization. So that's how it is. Mo Yunjue sighed. I didn't expect that the key to breaking the restriction would be here. Everyone, let's stop chatting. This is a rare opportunity. Let's hurry up and absorb this energy. Bailey Hongzhuang reminded everyone. No one knew how long they could stay in the black pool. What they could do now was to hurry up and absorb as much energy as they could. After hesitating for a long time, Li Boyo finally decided to try opening the coffin. Just wait and see. The treasure must be in the coffin. In the next moment, as Li Boyo stretched out his hand to open the coffin, a powerful force suddenly exploded from the coffin. Li Boyo only felt himself being attacked by a powerful force. Then his entire body flew out and crashed into the wall. His internal organs felt as if they had been crushed. Pooh! A mouthful of blood uncontrollably spurted out from Li Boyo's mouth. His face instantly turned pale and his aura withered. This scene happened so suddenly that everyone present could not help but be stunned. However, even though they had already guessed that Li Boyo's actions were a little too much and that he might be punished by the owner of the ruins, the punishment came so quickly and so shockingly. It was beyond their expectations. Seniorly, the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect all rushed to Li Boyo's side. This scene was really shocking. They did not expect the punishment to be so severe. Everyone tried to help Li Boyo up, but Li Boyo seemed as if he had no strength. His face turned pale, and he could not stop spurting out blood. "Senior Brother Li, how are you?" the disciples asked with concern. Their faces were filled with worry. However, Li Boyo was not in the mood to reply to the crowd. His eyes were wide open, as if something unbelievable had happened. "Senior Li, what's wrong?" The cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect asked one after another. They were completely clueless as to what the problem was. At the same time, Wan Yinling and Bai Yingtian arrived beside Li Boyo. Their expressions were somewhat complicated. Chapter 4079. Impossible. Li Boyo shook his head with a pale face. It's absolutely impossible. It's impossible for something like this to happen. I must have made a mistake. When everyone saw that Li Boyo was only muttering to himself and ignoring their questions, they couldn't help but feel puzzled. "Senior Brother Li, what exactly happened? What are you talking about?" Everyone asked one after another, but Li Boyo's face remained pale and he was unwilling to answer. His expression was one of someone who had suffered a huge blow. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, completely clueless as to where the problem came from. "It's impossible. It wasn't easy for me to cultivate to this level. How can my Dantian be destroyed?" Li Boyo shouted crazily. This matter was too big a blow for him. He could not accept it at all. It was just a single attack. With his current strength, he could not even block an attack that was placed on the coffin. Everyone who was still a little doubtful was stunned after hearing Li Boyo's words. They couldn't help but widen their eyes, and a look of shock appeared on their faces. "Senior Brother Li, what did you say? Your cultivation has been destroyed?" The cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect could not believe it. Li Boyo was a cultivator who had reached the 5th level of the Starlight Realm. Even in the entire Penglai Island, there were not many people who could be his opponent. However, Just a single attack from the coffin was enough to destroy his Danteon. Just how powerful was the attack? How terrifying was the strength of the owner of the ruins? It's too terrifying. The cultivators' presence sighed one after another. Such a punishment was simply unacceptable to cultivators. Wan Yinling and Bai Yingtian could not help but look at each other. They had already felt that Li Boyo's actions were a little too much. However, the punishment from the owner of the ruins was too severe. This was equivalent to directly cutting off Li Boyo's path of survival. For cultivators of their level, they had spent so much effort to get to where they were today with great difficulty. However, with just one move, they had become crippled. Such a blow was even harder to accept than if they were told to die. Bai Yingtian could not help but feel a little lucky. Fortunately, he did not listen to Li Yunyu and try to do all this. Otherwise, he would be the one in a tragedy now. After seeing Li Boyo's change, everyone was silent for a moment. The cultivators of Penglai Palace and 100 Flowers Gate naturally would not be affected by Li Boyo's situation. This kind of thing could be said to be happy to see. However, through this incident, they also understood the temper and strength of the owner of the ruins. This coffin could be said to be sacred and inviolable. This way, we don't have to worry. Revenge. Those who are unjust are doomed to destruction. Imo Yunjue said indifferently. Chapter 4080. For Li Boyo, this kind of blow is probably worse than taking his life. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Who cares? Anyway, I'm very happy to see him end up like this. Shangwan Yingying looked proud. Li Boyo is just like his younger brother, Li Yunyu. They're both so annoying. Don't worry about them. Let's focus on cultivating now. Deep Beichun reminded everyone. Although there are only a few cultivators in the palace who could discover this, there might still be some cultivators who would discover this opportunity. Moreover, after the incident with Li Boyo, everyone would definitely respect the owner of the ruins more. Therefore, the possibility of discovering this would also increase. Immediately, everyone stopped paying attention to the situation outside. They had to grasp this opportunity well. After the incident with Li Boyo, the other cultivators no longer dared to have any thoughts about the coffin. Thinking about it, as long as they approached the coffin, they would be attacked. No one dared to try it again. Right. We're the 3 newcomers from Penglai Palace who were here just now. After the cultivator from 100 Flowers Gate looked around, he suddenly realized that Imo Yunjue and the other 2 had disappeared. As the cultivator's voice fell, everyone present could not help but look around. They realized that the 3 of them were indeed nowhere to be seen. That's not right. They were clearly with us before. How could they suddenly disappear? I didn't remember wrongly, right? A cultivator was also somewhat confused. Could it be that he was hallucinating before? Or did the 3 of them not enter the palace at all? You didn't remember wrongly. The 3 of them were indeed here before. Another cultivator confirmed his answer. Then when did they disappear? I don't know. Everyone was at a loss. Previously, everyone's attention was on Li Boyo. No one paid attention to Imo Yunjue and the other 2, because in their eyes, the 3 of them were the weakest. There was no need to pay attention to them at all. If a cultivator had not mentioned this point, they probably would not have noticed at all. Wan Yinling, your Penglai Palace team is a bit strange. Bai Yingtian looked at Wan Yinling with doubt in his eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun are also gone. Do you know where they are? Everyone else was here, but Bailey Hongzhuang's team was missing. This was too strange. Hearing Bai Yingtian's question, Wan Yinling's expression was a bit complicated. He didn't understand this either. There was clearly no way out of this hall. They had already tried, but the door could not be opened at all. Moreover, if they left just like that, no one would be able to ignore such a huge commotion. Then, where did this group of people run off to? I don't know either, Wan Yinling said helplessly. Previously, he had already heard that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not ordinary people. Now, after this trip to the ruins, he really felt that they were not simple. Chapter 4081. However, Bai Yingtian did not believe Wan Yinling's answer. No way. Bai Yingtian raised his eyebrows. Disbelief was written all over his face. The three of them are disciples of Penglai Palace. You are the strongest person in Penglai Palace. How could you not know? The cultivators of Hundred Flower Gate and Crimson Moon Sect all looked at Wan Yinling. The only people who might know the truth were the cultivators of Penglai Palace. Feeling everyone's gaze, the cultivators of Penglai Palace felt helpless. No one believed it, but they really did not know what was going on. Just like the cultivators of Hundred Flower Gate and Crimson Moon Sect, they did not pay much attention to Mo Yunjue and the others. It was just that in such a short time, no one could figure out how they disappeared. Most importantly, in front of everyone's gaze, it would be embarrassing if they said they did not know. Believe it or not, Wan Yinling's expression was a little ugly. If I really knew, wouldn't I have left with them long ago? Why would I stay here with you? Hearing Wan Yinling's words, Bai Ingtian and the others could not help but look at each other. What he said made sense. From the looks of it, even you don't know. Bai Ingtian sighed. I didn't expect these young people to have such high comprehension. We still haven't found where the opportunity is, but they found it. For a moment, everyone sighed in their hearts. They had heard that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were very powerful, but after seeing it for themselves, they realized that their comprehension was terrifying. Not long after, Renzime and the others also entered the hall. After entering the hall, they found that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not there. They could not help but feel confused. Senior brother Wan Yin, have you seen junior sister Bailey and the others? Ren Ziheng walked to Wan Yinling and asked. Hearing this, Wan Yinling shook his head and said, We didn't see them when we came in. What about junior brother Wan and the others? Ren Zime asked. They came in after you. Wan Yinling looked a little helpless. Just now, when we were all looking around, we didn't know how they left this hall. We're also looking for a way now. Hearing this, Renzime and the others couldn't help but look at each other, their eyes flashing with disbelief. Why was it so hard to believe what he said? However, since Wan Yinling said so, no matter how much they doubted, it was useless. They could only reluctantly nod and pretend to believe his words. Wan Yinling naturally knew that Renzime and the others had doubts about his answer, but in reality, everything he said was the truth. Since the other party didn't believe him, there was nothing he could do. He could only sulk in his heart. As time passed, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others concentrated on absorbing the energy in the black pool. The energy in the black pool was extremely large, but their absorption speed was not slow either. As they absorbed the energy, Xiren and Shangwan Yingying actually felt the opportunity to break through again. After discovering this, Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were pleasantly surprised. Chapter 4082. The energy in this black pool is too powerful. When Xiren's eyes shone brightly. If we have the chance to stay here for a few more days, we might be able to increase our strength even more. At their level, it was extremely difficult for them to increase their cultivation quickly because the amount of energy required was too much. Even with the help of spiritual stones, it would take a lot of time to cultivate. However, the energy in this black pool was not only abundant, but it also did not need to be refined. Hence, it greatly increased the speed of cultivation. Yes, this is the most precious treasure in this relic. Di Beichun smiled faintly. It's best if we can use this opportunity to increase our strength as soon as possible. If possible, he also hoped to enter the upper realm as soon as possible. He wanted to know if he was really a descendant of the Di family who had wandered outside. According to what Ao Ling Xiao had said, the possibility of this was extremely high. Ever since he knew that he might not have been abandoned by his parents, his mood had improved a lot. He did not mind that he had wandered outside for so many years because his master had never wronged him. Instead, his master had always treated him as his grandson. If his family had been searching for his whereabouts all these years, it would be a kind of comfort to him. When Xiren nodded, of course. Just as they were talking, Wan Yinling's figure suddenly appeared in the black pool. Noticing Wan Yinling's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. However, they quickly regained their composure. In fact, They knew that with Wan Yanling's strength, it was very likely that he had discovered this place. Hence, although they were a little surprised, they did not find it strange. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in the black pool, Wan Yanling's eyes flashed with intense surprise. I was wondering where you guys had gone before. It turns out that you guys were in this black pool. Wan Yanling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in surprise. He did not expect that this was a trick that had actually bewitched all of them. Listening to Wan Yanling's words, a smile appeared on the faces of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. So, it seems that you all have been looking at me as a joke. Wan Yanling raised his eyebrows. Previously, when he was questioned by everyone outside, it wasn't an ordinary embarrassment. Senior brother Wan Yan, we don't have the intention to laugh at you. Di Beichin said slowly. It's just that there's a restriction on this black pool. Our voices can't reach the outside at all, so even if we wanted to warn you, it's useless. Hearing this, Wan Yanling understood. I see. While Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were cultivating in the black pool, the other cultivators were also staying in the hall. Not only were they unable to find a mechanism to enter the next step, they couldn't even get out. For a time, everyone was extremely vexed. Suddenly, a cultivator from the Crimson Moon sect fell to the ground with a pained look on his face. Seeing this, everyone could not help but be stunned. Qin Shuang, what happened to you? Li Buyo looked at the cultivator in the group and asked. Chapter 4083. Ever since Li Buyo's Dantian was destroyed, he had become extremely dispirited. However, he knew that he was once the most outstanding cultivator in the Crimson Moon sect. As the leader of the team, he could not just collapse like this. At the very least, he could not let Wan Yanling see him as a joke. Therefore, he forced himself to act as if nothing had happened. Just as this cultivator revealed a pained expression, another cultivator from the Crimson Moon sect also collapsed. 7 cultivators fell one after another before the situation came to a stop. When the crowd saw the appearance of these 7 people, their eyes were filled with shock. They had no idea what had happened. Why did it suddenly become like this? Li Buyo, based on their behavior, they seemed to have been poisoned. Bai Yingtian could not help but say. Their lips were purple and they looked like they were in pain. This was the most obvious sign of being poisoned. Li Buyo obviously noticed this too. He could not help but frown. Who could have poisoned them? Bai Yingtian could not help but look at the cultivators in his team and ask, how do you feel? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? The cultivators from 100 Flowers Gate looked at each other and shook their heads. We don't seem to be. Bai Yingtian, you are all doctors. Come and help see what's wrong with them. Li Buyo could not help but say. Hearing this, Bai Yingtian slowly walked in front of Qin Shuang and took his pulse. How is it? Li Buyo asked after Bai Yingtian withdrew his hand. He has been poisoned. I'm afraid he won't survive, Bai Yingtian said with a heavy expression. Bai Yingtian, although we're usually competitors, we're still friends, Bai Yingtian said. Now that all of us are trapped here, don't leave us in the lurch. Li Buyo frowned. Now that his strength was completely crippled, the entire Crimson Moon sect's combat power had greatly decreased. If they lost 7 more cultivators, their team situation would be really bad. Bai Yingtian shook his head. It's not that I don't want to help you, but this poison is really too difficult to cure. With my strength, there is no way to cure it. I don't understand where you got this poison. Along the way, they had not encountered anything that was poisoned. Moreover, if it was from the skeletons, it wouldn't have only been triggered by the 7 cultivators, right? Are you telling the truth? Li Buyo asked again. At a time like this, I have no reason to lie to you. Bai Yingtian's expression was certain. Although we are usually competitors, the 100 Flowers Gate's duty is to save people. As long as you are willing to pay the price, we will agree to save you. Why would we refuse? Hearing Bai Yingtian's words, Li Buyo understood that there was no way to cure this poison. Bai Yingtian's eyes, Bai Yingtian, and Yingtian. Shangguan Yingying's eyes shone with relief. Hongzhuang, we're lucky to have you by our side to warn us. Otherwise, we'd be the ones who'd fall into the trap. Before, when Bailey Hongzhuang said that those treasures were poisonous, she was somewhat unwilling to believe it, because it was really too much of a pity. Chapter 4084. That's right. I didn't expect those treasures to be poisoned. Fortunately, Hongzhuang was by our side. Otherwise, we would have all been poisoned. Xiren could not help but sigh. In the face of so many treasures, most people would not be able to control themselves and would want to take them. If it were not for Hongzhuang's reminder and their trust in Hongzhuang, many people would not have cared at all. In fact, they had expected that Li Boyo and the others would be poisoned. Originally, they thought that everyone in Li Boyo's group would be poisoned. However, they did not expect that only 7 people would be poisoned. This loss was considered relatively small. After hearing their conversation, Wan Yinling could not help but reveal a puzzled expression. What do you mean by this? Senior brother Wan Yin, don't you know? Shangwan Yingying asked curiously. Wan Yinling shook his head. I don't know what you're talking about. Hearing Wan Yinling's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but look at each other. They understood in their hearts. They did not expect the cultivators of Crimson Moon sect to be so fast. They had already collected all the treasures before Wan Yinling and the others arrived. However, this was also a good thing. If they had not been fast enough, the cultivators of Penglai Palace would have been poisoned. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others explained the process of the matter, Wan Yinling finally understood. He could not help but feel a lingering fear in his heart. It was really fortunate that the cultivators of Crimson Moon sect had arrived before them. Otherwise, this situation would have fallen on their heads. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. I'm afraid no one can resist such a temptation. Wan Yinling's gaze could not help but fall on Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were outstanding enough to discover that those treasures had been poisoned. For a moment, Li Boyo did not realize when the cultivators in the group had been poisoned. After thinking carefully, Qin Shuang said, Senior brother Li, those treasures must have been poisoned. Ever since they entered the ruins, they had not encountered many situations, not to mention that everyone had faced it together. Logically speaking, it was impossible for only a portion of the people to be poisoned. After eliminating the possibility, the only possibility left was when everyone else had left. They were the only ones who had collected the treasures. Listening to Qin Shuang's words, Li Boyo reacted. After taking a closer look at the poisoned cultivators, he realized that only the cultivators who stayed there to collect treasures were poisoned. It was no wonder that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had left these treasures behind. It was likely that they had already discovered the peculiarity of these treasures. Back then, although he vaguely felt that something was wrong with the situation, he still couldn't figure out what the problem was. It turned out that this was the biggest problem. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others are too despicable. Li Boyo's face was filled with anger. If it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they would not have fallen into such a situation. The other party had obviously dug a trap and waited for them to jump into it. However, after Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in the Black Pool heard Li Boyo's abuse, their faces were filled with displeasure. This Li Boyo is really too much. This matter clearly has nothing to do with us. If it weren't for their greed, how could they have been poisoned? Chapter 4085. Junior sister Shangwan, you don't have to be so angry. Seeing Shangwan Yingying's unbalanced expression, Wan Yinling could not help but comfort her. Li Boyo has always been like this. Once things don't go as he wishes, he likes to push the blame to others. This guy deserves it. Shangwan Yingying pursed her lips. She could not be bothered to argue with him anymore. The cultivators of the 100 Flowers Gate tried for a long time before they were sure that the poison they were poisoned with was an ancient poison. This poison had been lost for a long time. They had only seen it in ancient books. As for the antidote, it was even more impossible for them to know. The poison acted up very quickly. Within 2 hours after it acted up, the 7 cultivators had already lost their lives. Looking at the 7 corpses in front of them, the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect all had ugly expressions. No one thought that they would suffer such a great loss here. These were all their teammates who had always been with them. Now, 7 of them had died. It was really hard for them to accept. Now, even Wan Yinling has found a way to enter. We haven't found one yet. We have to work hard. Bai Yingtian looked at the cultivators in his team. Now, everyone who had entered the next stage was from the Penglai Palace. They were really embarrassed. The cultivators of the 100 Flowers Gate nodded and immediately started searching the main hall. Wan Yinling's disappearance told them that as long as they could find a way to enter, they would be able to enter. So, they just needed to find a way. Ren Ziheng and the others had also tried everything. However, they had to admit that although they usually felt that their comprehension was not bad, ever since they came to the ruin, they realized that it was not enough. No matter how hard they racked their brains, they could not find a way to enter the next stage. They could only helplessly sit down and meditate. In the blink of an eye, a few days had passed. What's going on? There's nothing in the main hall at all. A cultivator could not help but mutter. Now, we can't even find a way to leave. Are we going to stay here forever? The owner of the ruin has such a strange personality. Don't tell me he wants to trap us here forever? Don't tell me we're going to die here? Everyone's expression became extremely ugly. Those who had entered the next stage had already entered long ago, but they still hadn't entered until now. In their hearts, they already understood that it was basically impossible. Although it was fine to leave like this, being trapped in this place was not a solution. Rinzimei's expression turned ugly as well. Big brother, we won't be trapped here forever, right? Ren Ziheng couldn't help but look around. With a gloomy face, he said, that shouldn't be the case. Maybe we'll be able to leave after Junior Sister Bailey and the others succeed. I can only hope that this is the case. Chu Jinfeng sighed. It's really not that easy to obtain the inheritance of this ruin. Under such circumstances, Bai Yingtian also entered the Black Pool. The number of cultivators in the Black Pool gradually increased until it reached 10 people, and then it stopped increasing. Chapter 4086. Time flew by like a white steed, and a month's time quietly passed. Although the energy in the Black Pool was enormous, the 10 of them absorbed it at a very fast speed. Gradually, the energy in the Black Pool became less and less. It was not far from being completely absorbed. As more and more cultivators absorbed the energy, no one was willing to waste any more time. After all, if the energy was absorbed by others, it would be gone for them as well. It was extremely difficult to encounter such pure energy on a normal day. Only when the last drop of energy was absorbed did everyone open their eyes. In just a short span of a month, all the cultivators' strength had improved. If it was any other time, it would be impossible for him to do this. Although we didn't get any rare treasures on this trip, it was worth it to be able to increase our cultivation. Bai Yingtian's face revealed a joyful smile. For cultivators, there was nothing happier than increasing their cultivation. That's right. Just with this reward, our trip was worth it. Wan Yinling nodded. Fortunately, he was able to enter the Black Pool by accident. Otherwise, if he lost this opportunity, he would have to spend even more time. Among all the cultivators, Xiren and Shangwan Yingying had the greatest improvement. Because their cultivation was the weakest among the 10 of them, their speed of improvement was also the fastest. Originally, they were only at the 7th level of the Purple Realm. Now, they had reached the 9th level of the Purple Realm. In just a short month, they had increased by 2 levels. This kind of reward would make anyone jealous. Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were also very happy about this. Now, though when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were only 1 level away from breaking through to the Starlight Realm, the time it would take was much shorter than before. Therefore, they also planned to wait until this trip to the ruins was over before telling them about the Upper Realm and Di Beichen's background. Previously, they were worried that they would feel pressured after knowing this, so they did not say anything. Now that the difference was not big, they probably would not feel too much pressure. After everyone had absorbed all the energy in the Black Pool, the seal on the Black Pool dissipated. Only now did Ren Ziheng and the others, who had been waiting outside, notice them. Their faces immediately surged with astonishment. So you were in the Black Pool. Renzime quickly walked over to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Her eyes were filled with shock as she said, "I was wondering where you guys had run off to. It turns out that you were in the same hall as us." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "Yes, we were able to enter the Black Pool after getting the approval of the owner of the monument. It's just that there are restrictions in this Black Pool, so we can't communicate with you." "I see." After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, everyone suddenly realized that Bailey Hongzhuang and her group had gone to another place. They didn't expect that they had been here all along. Li Boyo's mood was the most complicated. Originally, he wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, but he never thought that he would be completely crippled now. Wan Yinling and Bai Yingtian had both obtained the energy in the Black Pool, but he no longer had the chance to compete with everyone, because with his Dantian crippled, even if he had the chance, it would be meaningless in front of him. Chapter 4087. Hearing Li Boyo's words, the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect were shocked. They then cried out, "Big senior brother, you will always be our big senior brother." Even though Li Boyo's Dantian had been crippled, Li Boyo had always treated them well. Hence, they would not ignore Li Boyo because of this. Li Boyo's face suddenly became a little better, and he immediately said to the disciples of the Crimson Moon sect present, "If you still treat me as your senior brother, then help me kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others." Now, his hatred for Bailey Hongzhuang and the others has reached a whole new level. He only felt that ever since he had met Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, his journey had not been smooth sailing. Now that his Dantian had been crippled, his heart had become even more narrow-minded. Instantly, he had placed all the blame on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Even though he was now a good-for-nothing, he still needed to borrow the power of others to kill Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Only then would he be able to vent his resentment. Once Li Boyo had spoken, the cultivators of the Crimson Moon sect were shocked. They never thought that Li Boyo would still be so persistent about this matter at a time like this. "What? You're not willing?" Li Boyo could not help but ask when he saw the expressions on their faces. Everyone shook their heads. "Big senior brother, don't worry. Since this is your wish, we will definitely help you fulfill it." "Great!" Li Boyo's face lit up with joy. Previously, he had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' desire to kill Li Yunyu was a little far-fetched. However, now that he had noticed the other party's behavior, he felt that it was really possible. With the new and old grudges added together, he wanted Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to die. Once Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had stepped out, the crowd could not help but try to open the Great Hall's door. However, they never thought that the Great Hall's door would be the same as before. It could not be opened at all. Seeing this, a thick sense of astonishment filled the crowd's faces. Now that the Black Pool's energy had been completely absorbed, why was the door still unable to open? Could it be that there's something special in this hall that we haven't discovered, so we can't leave for the time being? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly, and her clear and bright phoenix eyes flickered with a trace of contemplation. She did not believe that the owner of the ruins would intend to trap all of them here. Since they could not find a way to leave, there must be a reason. But the entire hall is unobstructed. The coffin can't be moved, and the other places are just empty spaces. What other special places can there be? Shang Guanying looked puzzled. This place was too empty. It didn't look like there were any other mechanisms. Moreover, hadn't they already absorbed the energy in the Black Pool? The cultivators from 100 Flowers Gate and the Crimson Moon sect were also very confused. They discussed this strange situation. However, just as everyone was discussing exactly how to leave the hall, the scene before their eyes suddenly changed. Di Beichun felt his vision blur for a moment. Then, his entire being appeared in another place. It was a dark and deep place. At first glance, there was only endless darkness, filled with a sense of iciness and coldness. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, who had been standing next to him, had disappeared. Only he was left standing there all by himself. An illusion? Chapter 4088. Just as Di Beichun was puzzled, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The man was dressed in a black robe, and his whole person seemed to have merged with the darkness. If it were not for his eyes, he would not have been able to detect the other party's aura, which had completely blended into the environment. Immediately, Deep Beichun realized that the man in front of him should be the owner of this ruin. "Greetings, Senior." Deep Beichun bowed, his face full of respect. He did not expect to have the opportunity to see a trace of the owner of this ruin here. It was really unexpected. The owner of the ruin slowly turned around, and his elegant appearance was somewhat different from what Deep Beichun imagined. He thought that the other party should be very old, but he did not expect him to be so handsome. "Young man, I admire you." The owner of the ruin had a faint smile on his face, and his eyes were full of appreciation. "It is my honor to be appreciated by Senior." The owner of the ruin smiled faintly. "You should already know that I have the inheritance of darkness in my hands. You have gone through many difficulties to come here, just for this inheritance, right?" Although it was a question, the owner of the ruin said it with great certainty. "It is as Senior said." Deep Beichun bowed and did not hide it. In fact, every cultivator who came here came for this purpose. He thought that the most precious inheritance in this ruin was the Black Pool, and there would be no inheritance of the power of darkness. He did not expect that there would be a glimmer of hope in the end. It was really a silver lining. The power of darkness, even if the inheritance had disappeared for so many years, was still daunting. Just this point alone showed how powerful it was. Everyone says that the power of darkness is an evil power, and they do everything possible to destroy this inheritance. But there are still more cultivators who want to obtain this power and become stronger. Have you ever thought that if you obtain the inheritance of the power of darkness, it is very likely that you will be rejected by others? Deep Beichun said slowly, "Power itself doesn't have good or bad attributes. It just depends on what the person who wields this power chooses to do." He did not reject the power of darkness. Although the power of darkness could control skeletons and other inanimate objects, it was indeed somewhat evil. However, if it was used for proper purposes, it would be righteous. In the end, all of this was in the hands of the cultivators. The same scene appeared in front of almost all the cultivators. The inheritance of the power of darkness seemed to be right in front of them, within easy reach. As long as they could obtain the approval of the master of the ruins, they would be able to obtain the inheritance of this powerful power. From then on, their identities would be different from before. "I can help you get everything you want, as long as you help me destroy those righteous people." The master of the ruins looked at Bai Yingtian, his calm voice full of bewitchment. When Bai Yingtian heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Hesitation appeared on his face. "Senior, even if I obtain the inheritance of the Dark Force, I'm afraid I can't do it alone." Chapter 4089. You should have heard of how powerful the cultivators with the power of darkness were. Those so-called righteous people were just jealous of how powerful we were, so they banded together to destroy us. The reason why I left this ruin behind is to find a suitable successor who can bring our power of darkness to greater heights and make those people receive the punishment they deserve. The owner of the ruins' eyes flickered with rage. Evidently, he was extremely furious about what had happened back then. His gaze fell on Bai Yingtian as he spoke again. "If you don't have the courage, then forget it. After all, there are many cultivators here, and I'm sure we'll find an excellent seedling." The owner of the ruins' words were filled with disdain. It was clear that he did not intend to give the inheritance to Bai Yingtian. Noticing the owner's change in attitude, Bai Yingtian revealed a trace of anxiety and hurriedly explained, "Senior, that's not what I meant." "Oh." The owner of the ruin glanced at Bai Yingtian and said, "Then what do you mean? Those people are too despicable. I'll definitely fulfill your final wish and catch them all in one fell swoop. They'll receive the punishment they deserve." Bai Yingtian's eyes flickered with excitement. Nothing was more important than obtaining power. He had been in the 100 Flowers Order for a long time and understood the power of darkness very well. He naturally knew that others were afraid of it. He did not care about that. The only thing he cared about was how powerful the power of darkness was. As long as he could obtain this power, he would be able to obtain everything he wanted. From then on, he would no longer have to work as hard as he could to obtain some rewards. From then on, the skeleton army would listen to his orders. From then on, his power would be enough to resist everything. Just thinking about that made him feel as if he had fallen into a dream. He only felt an indescribable sense of happiness. That's right. The power of darkness can let you obtain everything you want as long as you kill those righteous people. The owner of the ruin nodded in satisfaction. Senior, don't worry. I'll definitely do it. Bai Tian vowed. Just as Bai Tian finished speaking, the owner of the ruin suddenly disappeared. Seeing this, Bai Tian could not help but reveal a deep sense of confusion. He was confident that his answer was correct. The owner of the ruin was also very satisfied with him. According to the situation, the inheritance should belong to no one else but him. Why did the owner of the ruin suddenly disappear? Bailey Hongzhuang stood in place and looked at everyone around her as if they had suddenly entered a meditative state. She could not help but be stunned. Beicheng, Yinju. She tried to call out to the cultivators beside her, but no one responded. Apparently, they had all entered the same state. However, since everyone had entered such a state, why was she the only one who did not have any reaction? What was going on? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't understand for a while. She also realized that this was the last moment of the competition for the inheritance of darkness, but she couldn't even enter this state. Didn't that mean that she didn't even have the chance to pass the test? Why was this? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't understand. Chapter 4090. Young lady, I feel that your aura is very familiar. Hearing this voice, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be surprised, and a trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. Are you the owner of the ruins? Although she could only hear the voice, she felt that the voice was very familiar. It was the same voice that she had heard from the owner of the ruins. That's right, it's me. Are you familiar with my aura? Bailey Hongzhuang looked astonished and said, Actually, when I first saw the ruins, I also felt that the aura of the ruins was very familiar. Hee hee. The owner of the ruins chuckled. In that case, we're considered to be fated. You and I do have some connections. May I know what you mean, Senior? There are some things that you'll understand in the future. Senior, I have something to ask. What is it? Are the other people around me being tested by you? Bailey Hongzhuang asked out of her own doubts. That's right. If I may ask, why can't I? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. She could not understand. In terms of potential, she was confident that she would not lose out to the majority of the cultivators here. Why could everyone else be tested, but not her? Because you have a more suitable inheritance, and this darkness inheritance is not suitable for you. The owner of the ruins' voice was filled with vicissitudes of life, and sighed as if he was recalling something from a long time ago. A more suitable inheritance for me? Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned. She did not quite understand what the owner of the ruins meant. Senior. Just as she was about to continue asking, the owner of the ruins did not reply. Just as she thought that the owner of the ruins was no longer around, the drifting and distant voice rang out once again. Later, walk into the depths of the ruins. Perhaps you'll gain something. What an ill-fated relationship. Hearing the owner of the ruins' guidance, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. She could not help but be curious about what else was in the depths of the ruins. Could it be that it could lead her to a suitable inheritance? However, how would the owner of the ruins know where the suitable inheritance was? After hearing the owner's last sentence, the confusion in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes deepened. Ill-fated relationship? What did he mean by that? She was really confused. Hearing Di Beichen's answer, the owner of the ruins couldn't help but chuckle, but his eyes suddenly became stern. That's what you think, but that doesn't mean the rest of the world thinks the same way. What if they see you as a scourge after knowing that you have the inheritance of the dark force? What will you do then? Faced with the question of the owner of the ruins, Di Beichen appeared very free and easy. In this world, outstanding talents will always be envied by others. As long as you are strong enough, others won't be able to defeat you. So what if they say whatever they want? He didn't care what others thought of him. As long as his friends believed in him, that was enough. As for the others, he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them. The master of the ruins looked at Di Baichun with a different gaze and said, "What if I told you that this dark power itself is evil?" Hearing this, Di Baichun couldn't help but frown as a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. "I don't think so." Chapter 4091. Young man, you have your own opinions. The owner of the ruins smiled faintly. "You want my inheritance. I can give you a chance. As long as you promise me that you can do it, I'll give you this inheritance. Because you're currently the most outstanding young man in my ruins." Hearing the owner's words, Di Baichun's eyes could not help but light up, and a little excitement emerged in his heart. The inheritance of the power of darkness must be very impressive. If he could obtain this inheritance, his power would definitely increase greatly. With great power, he would be able to protect Hong Zhuang well. Previously, because of his physique, Hong Zhuang had always been taking care of his emotions. However, as her man, he hoped that he could be strong enough to protect Hong Zhuang and not let Hong Zhuang suffer any grievances. Furthermore, they were about to head to the upper realm, in a place where powerhouses were as common as clouds. Only by being strong enough would they have the power to protect themselves. "May I know what you want me to do, senior?" Even though he was a little excited, Di Baichun was not overjoyed by this news. He only needed to think a little to guess that the thing that the owner of the ruins wanted him to do would not be simple. This could be considered a test for him. You should know that the reason the power of darkness disappeared from this world was all because of those sanctimonious fellows who claimed to be the masters of justice. What I want you to do is very simple. Kill them and let the power of darkness reappear in this world. That will be enough. As the owner of the ruins finished speaking, Di Baichun's expression could not help but change a little. He said, "Senior, I'm very sorry. I'm afraid I can't agree to this." Hearing Di Baichun's answer, the owner of the ruins was clearly a little surprised. You must know that after mastering the power of darkness, your power will increase greatly. It will be far from what it was before. Many cultivators will look up to you in the future. You will become a high and mighty existence in their hearts. So, you've decided to refuse? The owner of the ruins seemed very confident. He believed that no one could resist such a temptation. However, Di Baichun still nodded firmly. "Senior, I've decided to refuse." "Why?" The owner of the ruins looked puzzled. "If you're worried that you're not strong enough to do this, then you can rest assured. The skeleton army will be yours to command in the future. They will all become your helpers. You can even make more of them." Di Baichun shook his head. "That's not why I refused." "What's that?" "I do want to inherit the power of darkness and possess great power, but I can't use others as stepping stones. I don't know what happened back then, but if they really used this as an excuse to suppress the cultivators of the dark forces, then they were wrong. If I were to attack them in this way, how would I be any different from them in the past?" Di Baichun cupped his hands towards the owner of the ruins. "Senior, I'm really sorry. I failed to live up to your expectations." He really couldn't agree to this request. Although he didn't think he was a good person, he definitely wasn't an evil person. At the end of the day, the other party did not have any grudges with him. So how could he attack others for no reason? Chapter 4092. After making such an answer, Di Baichun fell into silence. He did not know what kind of decision the owner of the ruins would make, nor did he know if his answer would anger the other party. However, the only thing he could do now was to wait for the owner's decision. After all, with the strength of the owner of the ruins, there was probably no chance for him to escape. "If you don't agree, I may kill you." The owner of the ruins' expression became indifferent, and there was a trace of haze and coldness in the depths of his eyes. You have to think about it carefully. Di Baichun fell into silence. In fact, he had already guessed that there would be such a possibility, but when the owner of the ruins really said it, he still felt a little helpless in his heart. He could not help but think of Bailey Hongzhuang's figure. To him, death was not scary. Leaving Bailey Hongzhuang was the most terrifying thing. However, if he did not want to die, he would have to agree to such a request. This was also something he did not want to see. Gradually, Bachan fell into silence. The owner of the ruins' eyes kept flashing with a smug light, as if he had already seen through everything. However, Bachan replied again, "Even so, I will still refuse." He could not imagine how Bailey Hongzhuang would view him if he became a murderous maniac and spent all his time with these skeletons. Many innocent people died because of him. Presumably, Bailey Hongzhuang would not be able to accept it by then. Instead of that, he might as well lose his life like this. At least in Hongzhuang's heart, he still had such a great image. Moreover, he could still try to persuade the owner of the ruins to spare his life. This time, the owner of the ruins could not help but be stunned. "Are you really sure?" "I'm sure." Bachan nodded affirmatively. "Since you're not even afraid of death, why are you unwilling to agree to my request?" The owner of the ruins looked at Bachan with interest. Obviously, he felt very strange about his thoughts. "A gentleman has things to do and things not to do," Bachan slowly said. Everyone had their own beliefs when they were alive, and that was his belief. He could not break his promise to the owner of the ruins, nor was he willing to let so many people become his stepping stones. Therefore, he could only make such a choice. As Bachan's voice fell, the master of the monument looked deeply at Bachan. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "Good words. A gentleman has something to do and something not to do. Young man, you are very persistent in your beliefs. I like this very much. Then, are you willing to accept my inheritance?" Listening to the words of the owner of the ruins, Bachan couldn't help but be stunned again. His eyes flashed with a strong sense of doubt. "Senior, I've already answered before. I can't know." Before Bachan could finish his words, the owner of the ruins interrupted him. "Without those conditions, are you willing to accept my inheritance?" Bachan stared blankly at the owner of the ruins, unable to react for a moment. Did he hear wrongly? If there were no conditions, I would naturally be willing. "Very good." The owner of the ruins nodded with satisfaction. "You passed my test." As soon as these words came out, Bachan's eyes suddenly lit up, but his heart was even more confused. "Senior, you mean I've passed your test and can accept your inheritance?" Chapter 4093. Senior, may I ask why? Even though Bachan was very happy to be able to obtain this inheritance, the sudden change in attitude of the master of the ruins was really a little strange. "Actually, your view is very correct. Power itself does not have light or evil attributes, but many people have done wrong, so it led to such an opinion. The dark power is a very powerful force, but because some cultivators who have mastered the dark power did not use it in the right way, so this kind of thing happened." Bachan was a little surprised. "Senior, what do you mean?" "Everything I said before was just to test you. If you had agreed, then you'd have failed." The master of the ruins smiled faintly. "I didn't expect you to be able to make such a decision under my threat, so I admire you very much. You have passed my test." As soon as these words came out, Bachan understood. He never thought that the real question that the master of the ruins wanted to test was actually here. Everything before was just said on purpose. "I see. Thank you, Senior." Bachan bowed to the master of the ruins with a face full of joy. This feeling was really like rising from hell to heaven. Just a second ago, he was still facing the danger of losing his life, but the next second, he could obtain the inheritance of the dark power. This was really too important for him. "Since you have decided to accept my inheritance, then you have to change your words." The master of the ruins chuckled. Bachan's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly said, "Thank you, master." The master of the ruins nodded slightly. In fact, the dark power itself is the same as other forces. It is all power, but it has the characteristic of being able to summon the dead. At that time, there were indeed some cultivators who had mastered the dark power who used this to do some bad things, so that happened at that time. So, I don't want my successor to do the same thing at that time. This is an insult to the dark power. I hope that the dark power in your hands can be seen by everyone, so that the prejudice against it can be changed. Do you have the confidence to do it?" If Bachan still had some doubts in his heart, At this moment, the doubts in his heart completely disappeared. It turned out that the master of the ruins' thoughts were exactly the same as his. This was what made him the most happy. Then, Deep Beichun nodded solemnly. Senior, don't worry. I will work hard to make everyone face the dark power, and not let them have the prejudice against the dark power in the past. He believed that rumors would stop with the wise. Even if the things that happened many years ago left a deep impression on everyone, in the end, someone would be able to understand all of this. Very good. The Master of the Ruins Master, by Ing Tian, and the other cultivators were waiting for the owner of the ruin to pass on the inheritance to them. But after the owner disappeared, they waited for a long time without seeing any trace of the owner. Just when they were puzzled, they returned to their previous state. Bailey Hongzhuang had been standing in the same place since the voice of the master of the monument disappeared, waiting for Di Beichun and the others to come out of the assessment. She waited for a long time, but there was no movement. All of a sudden, he saw the cultivator beside him move. Chapter 4094. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes flashed with shock and doubt. Then, she guessed a possibility in her heart. Since the other cultivators had stopped here, only Di Beichun was in a different situation. Does this mean that Di Beichun has received the final inheritance? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up at the thought of this. It would be great if Di Beichun could receive the final inheritance. Just then, the other cultivators woke up one after another. Looking at the situation before them, everyone was stunned for a moment. Clearly, they could not understand why they had fallen out of their previous state. They had clearly received the approval of the owner of the ruins. Logically speaking, this should not have happened. What on earth was going on now? Shangguan Yingying and the others walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask curiously, Yingying, what happened to all of you before this? We should all have encountered the same situation. Xiren slowly spoke. We met the owner of the ruins and had a chat with him. He even said that he admired me. I've been waiting for him to pass the inheritance to me. However, I don't know why, but I suddenly fell back into my current state. Shangguan Yingying and the others nodded. That's right, we've encountered the same situation. After hearing that everyone's situation was exactly the same, they understood that this was just an excuse from the owner of the ruins. It seems that they had not passed the owner's test. Hongzhuang, did you encounter the same situation as us? Shangguan Yingying asked curiously. She had always felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was so smart that the possibility of her receiving the inheritance was very high. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged helplessly. To be honest, I didn't even have the chance to take the test. Hearing this, everyone could not help but be shocked. They looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion, not understanding what she meant. Hongzhuang, what do you mean? Previously, all of you had entered the test. I was the only one who didn't have any reaction. I've been waiting here for all of you to fall out of your state. Rin Zimei was stunned. Why is this happening? Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. I don't know either. However, the owner of the ruins also said something to me. He said that this inheritance is not suitable for me. Maybe the owner of the ruins has already seen through this, so he didn't let me take the test, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Hearing this, everyone finally understood what was going on. Hongzhuang, although you are not suitable for this inheritance, the fact that Master specially said these words to you already proves his appreciation for you. Rin Ziheng said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly with a faint smile on her face. I believe that the Master of the Ruins understands this inheritance the best. Since he has said so, it proves that I am not suitable for this inheritance. So, I have nothing to regret. There were many things that were not necessarily good just because they were powerful. What was most suitable for oneself was the best. Bailey Hongzhuang was very clear about this point. By the way, where is Beichen? Mo Yunjue asked. Hearing Mo Yunjue's words, everyone finally reacted. Previously, they were only thinking about the previous situation and did not pay much attention to their surroundings. Chapter 4095. Wanyan Ling by Ing Tian and the others were puzzled when they came out. However, they felt relieved when they saw that the other party didn't get the darkness inheritance. Although they didn't get the final inheritance, at least the other party didn't get it either. They were still at the starting point. However, when they heard the news that Bei-chun had disappeared, they couldn't help but be stunned. Now in this situation, everyone was here. Only Bei-chun had disappeared. The reason could be guessed as long as one carefully guessed. If Bei-chun got the final inheritance, it would be a big blow to them. Hong Zhuang, you've been here all this time. Did you see how Bei-chun disappeared? Shangguan Yingying quickly asked. Before the assessment, Bei-chun was with them. Now that he's suddenly disappeared, they had to find out where he went. Otherwise, they would be worried. Just as you were about to exit the state, Bei-chun was suddenly enveloped by a dark energy and disappeared from my sight. Bailey Hong Zhuang said slowly, "You don't have to worry too much. I don't think Bei-chun will be in danger." Then according to what you said, could it be that Bei-chun got the final inheritance? Ao Lingxiao's eyes lit up. Now that he thought about it, this was the most likely possibility. He also hoped that Bei-chun could get the final inheritance. After all, the stronger Bei-chun was, the greater the hope of him taking back his family in the future. When Ziren and the others couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised when they heard Ao Lingxiao's guess. If that's really the case, then that's great. There's no need to think about it. It must be Bei-chun who got the inheritance. Xiao He was certain. I have experience in this kind of thing. Seeing Xiao He's proud face, Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others couldn't help but chuckle. Bai Yingtian and Wan Yinling looked at each other with mixed feelings. Peng Lai Palace is really full of talents. I didn't expect that the two of us couldn't beat a newcomer. Bai Yingtian sighed. The inheritance of the power of darkness. Although it was not clear what kind of inheritance it was, but just thinking about it, Bei-chun who obtained this inheritance would definitely soar to the sky in the future. When they met this time, their strength was still above Bei-chun's, but the next time they met Bei-chun, the situation would change. Wan Yinling also nodded. Yes, there are always many excellent cultivators. We have to work hard too. Li Buyo's expression was already extremely gloomy. He was already a cripple now. Even if he obtained this inheritance, it would be of no use to him because he couldn't absorb the essence force at all. However, after knowing that the inheritor of this inheritance turned out to be Bei-chun, there was a burst of unhappiness in his heart. To him, no matter who obtained the inheritance, it was better than Bei-chun's team. At the same time, he also realized that if he didn't kill Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others now, he might not have a chance in the future. Thinking of this, he became even more determined. Hong Zhuang, what should we do now? Shangguan Yingying looked troubled. We don't know when Bei-chun will come back. Should we continue to wait here or go out? Chapter 4096. Bailey Hong Zhuang did not forget what the owner of the ruins had said to her. The owner of the ruins had asked her to explore the depths of the ruins. Perhaps she would reap some rewards. Since the owner of the ruins had specifically said so, she believed that there must be a reason. Therefore, she must explore the depths of the ruins and find out what the owner of the ruins had said about the rewards. When she thought of what the owner of the ruins had said to her, she felt very strange. Because the owner of the ruins had spoken as if he knew her very well. However, she had never interacted much with the owner of the ruins from the beginning to the end. This was something that she could not figure out. Moreover, when the owner of the ruins had spoken to her, he seemed to have thought of something that had happened a long time ago. It was more like he had seen another person through her. Therefore, she really wanted to find out everything. Isn't there no other place in the ruins? Where else do you plan to explore? Rinzume had a curious look on her face. According to the situation they had encountered along the way, this hall should be the final destination of the ruins. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled. I want to walk around and see if there is anything that we have missed in the ruins. Anyway, we have to wait for Bei-chun to come out. Why don't we take this opportunity to examine the ruins more thoroughly? Mo Yunju nodded. You're right. Since we're already here, let's look around so that we don't miss anything. Now that the most important inheritance had been obtained by Bei-chun, they could only wait here. Why not look around? Generally speaking, The owner of the ruins would always place some treasures in the ruins. Then we'll listen to you. When Xiren said, Rinzame and the rest did not have any objections. They were originally a group. Since they had come together, they naturally had to return together. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest's plan, Wan Yinling and the rest did not want to continue to stay here. They had walked around the ruins and understood the situation in the ruins. Therefore, they did not have any wishful thinking. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had decided to stay here because they wanted to wait for Di Beichen. There was no need for them to stay. It had to be said that everyone was not used to staying in a place shrouded in darkness. Now that there was nothing for them to do, they might as well go back and see the light of day again. They had been looking forward to this feeling for a long time. When the cultivators from the Crimson Moon sect noticed this, their expressions turned complicated. They had already promised Li Buyo that they would avenge Li Yunyu. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others continue to stay here, what should they do? Li Buyo quietly winked at them and said in a low voice, Let's pretend to leave with them first. After we separate from them, we'll come back. With Wan Yinling and Bai Yingtian here, he couldn't do anything. Only after they left would it be more convenient for them to do something. Without Di Beichen, Bailey Hongzhuang's team only had 2 Astral Radiance Realm cultivators. With their team strength, dealing with them was not a problem at all. Hearing Li Buyo's words, the cultivators from the Crimson Moon sect nodded. This was indeed the best way. Junior Sister Bailey, you guys continue to stay here. We'll leave first. Wan Yinling looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest and said. Chapter 4097. When Junior Brother D comes out, please help me convey my congratulations. I will be waiting for news of your return in Penglai Palace. I think the Palace Master will be very happy. Wan Yinling had a faint smile on his face. Although he was not the one who received the inheritance this time, he was still a disciple of Penglai Palace. Just this point alone was enough to make people feel gratified. Moreover, Li Buyo had become a cripple after this trip. No one would bother him in the future. This annoying fly would disappear from his sight in the future. Okay, definitely. After Wan Yinling left, Bai Yingtian also said, Miss Bailey, our 100 Flowers Gate has admired your medical skills for a long time. If there's a chance, Miss Bailey must come to our 100 Flowers Gate as a guest. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. Thank you for your invitation, Master Bai. If there's a chance in the future, I will definitely go. Okay, then I will wait for Junior Sister Bailey at 100 Flowers Gate. The cultivators of Crimson Moon sect followed closely behind. However, they did not treat Bailey Hongzhuang and the others well. They stood in front of them and snorted coldly before leaving together. Li Buyo's gaze fell on Wan Yinling. He knew very well that if they did not leave, Wan Yinling would definitely not leave. Therefore, he could only lie to Wan Yinling. In any case, it would take Bailey Hongzhuang and the others a long time to wait here for Di Beichen to come out. As expected, Wan Yinling deliberately glanced at Li Buyo when he left the hall. Obviously, he was on guard against him. After the cultivators of the other 3 teams had all left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat down to rest for a while. Li Buyo has become a cripple now. When he left, he actually dared to be disrespectful to us. I really want to beat him until he is looking for his teeth on the ground. Shangwan Yingying curled her lips. She felt very unhappy just by looking at that guy's appearance. If you want to do that, it's not too late to rush out now, Bailey Hongzhuang said with a chuckle. Hearing this, Shangwan Yingying's eyes lit up. Really? Xiren pulled Shangwan Yingying back and said, You're really going? I really want to go. If it was just Li Buyo alone, it wouldn't be a problem for you to go. However, those cultivators from the Crimson Moon sect are not to be trifled with. It will be very dangerous for you to go. Be good, don't make a fuss today. It won't be too late to vent our anger when we get back. Rin Ziheng also voiced out, Junior Brother one is right. Although Li Buyo's Dantian has already been destroyed, the cultivators and his team still respect him very much. If you attack him now, those cultivators will definitely not let you off. Don't underestimate them. Shangwan Yingying sighed. Sigh, what a pity. Without them here, I feel much more relaxed. Chu Jinfeng sighed. In the past, when he was in Penglai Palace, there was still a huge gap between him and a top team like Wang Yinling. He did not expect to compete with them this time. He had always felt a lot of pressure in his heart. Now that these guys were finally gone, he felt relaxed. That's true. Rinzime also smiled faintly. Since they're gone now, why don't we walk around the ruins? If we really find something, it would be great. Chapter 4098. After everyone had ascertained that there was indeed nothing else in the Great Hall, they walked out of the Great Hall and headed in another direction. However, this path was just like what they had seen before. There was no other special place that had been left behind. From what I can see, this should be the size of the ruins. There's no other place. Rin Ziheng looked around. They had checked out all the places that could be noticed, but they had not found anything. This was a dead end. Bailey Hongzhuang furrowed her brows. She had noticed this as well. However, the owner of the ruins had clearly told her to explore deeper. He could not have lied to her. She must have overlooked something. She had a vague feeling that the item that the owner of the ruins had mentioned was very important to her. Therefore, she had to find this thing. Not long after, everyone returned to the Great Hall and waited for Di Beichen's return. While everyone began to meditate and rest, Bailey Hongzhuang did not give up and continued to examine her surroundings. She still firmly believed in her initial thoughts. When Xiren and the others could not help but feel puzzled. They could not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang was so persistent about this. Hence, they assumed that Bailey Hongzhuang was very interested in the ruins and wanted to see if there were any other discoveries. Mo Yunjue slowly walked towards Bailey Hongzhuang and asked, Hongzhuang, do you think there's anything special about these ruins? Why do you believe that there must be something else here? His pitch-black eyes flashed with a bright and wise light. Based on his understanding of Bailey Hongzhuang, she would not have been so persistent if the latter had not discovered some clues. Seeing that Mo Yunjue had obviously guessed something, Bailey Hongzhuang did not hide anything. Previously, when you were undergoing the test, the owner of the ruins had spoken to me. He said that he wanted me to explore the depths of the ruins and that I might find something useful. However, I couldn't find any other way out even after searching here and there. The owner of the ruins couldn't have lied to me. This is rather strange. Bailey Hongzhuang furrowed her brows. At this moment, she had no clue at all. I see. And Mo Yunjue finally understood. Since the owner of the ruins said so, then there must be something hidden in the ruins. Don't be impatient. Anyway, there's still a lot of time. You can slowly search here and don't miss any details. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's the only way now. Mo Yunjue accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang as they searched the area for a while, but they still didn't find anything. The two of them then returned to the group to meditate and cultivate. At night, Bailey Hongzhuang was cultivating when she suddenly felt a calling power. It was as if there was a strange power that was attracting her. Under the guidance of this force, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked in a certain direction. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang walked until she was in front of a wall. There was no path in front of her, but the power was still pulling her forward. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with complicated feelings. Should I just follow this feeling, or should I do something? However, the pull of that power was just too strong. So, she still bumped into the wall. Chapter 4099. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang had stood up, Mo Yunjue had been paying attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. Faintly, he also felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's actions were a little strange. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang directly slam into the wall, he hurriedly rushed over and shouted, Hongzhuang, what are you doing? However, in the next second, he realized that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually passed through the wall and disappeared. When Xiren and the others heard Mo Yunjue's words, they all exited their cultivation state. With one look, they realized that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually disappeared behind the wall. With one look, everyone could not help but be dumbfounded. They had never realized that the wall could actually be passed through directly. Could it be that behind the wall was a brand new place? Or perhaps the owner of the ruins had other inheritances. Everyone's hearts were filled with astonishment. They never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang's intuition was right. There really was another special place in the ruins. After Mo Yunjue rushed in front of the wall, he did not hesitate to charge forward. However, what surprised him was that he could not pass through the wall at all. Instead, he was directly blocked by the wall. The pain from his forehead clearly told him that the wall was real and not a simulation. Shangguan Yingying and the others also came to Mo Yunjue's side. They stretched out their hands to touch the wall in front of them. They realized that the situation was the same as what Mo Yunjue had encountered. They could not pass through at all. What's going on? Why can Hongzhuang directly pass through, but we can't? Shangguan Yingying's face was filled with confusion. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, she would have found it very difficult to believe that all of this was real. Mo Yunjue gently shook his head. His heart was also filled with mixed feelings. That shouldn't be. Ao Lingxiao frowned. Since junior sister Bailey can enter, logically speaking, we should be able to too. Why is it stopping us outside? Maya shouldn't be playing tricks on me just now, right? Rinzame was still somewhat unable to react. This was a perfectly fine wall. How could they suddenly pass through it? Let's try again. Maybe if this wall doesn't work, another wall will do. Xiren suggested. Right now, he only felt that the ruins were really incomparably strange. Anything could happen. In a moment, everyone began to search. Mo Yunjue looked at the backs of the people searching and had a guess in his mind. Previously, the owner of the ruins specially left a message to Bailey Hongzhuang. This thing should only be related to Bailey Hongzhuang. The rest of them probably did not have a chance to get it. As expected, no matter how hard they searched, they searched. What? Uses? Yingying's disappeared. Yingying looked. Yingying. Shangguan Yingying's face was filled with helplessness. Di Beichun had disappeared because he had received the dark inheritance. But what about Bailey Hongzhuang? Hongzhuang should have her own encounter. Let's wait here. Mo Yunjue's voice was steady and certain. When the time came, he believed that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun would come out. I hope so. Chapter 4100. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw everything in front of her, her eyes couldn't help but flash with a trace of surprise. In the ruins that were filled with the power of darkness, the light had always been very dim. They could not see anything that was slightly further away. However, the place in front of her was unusually bright. It was so bright that she felt as if her eyes were shining. She even felt that this was another place and did not belong to the ruins at all. I never thought that there would be such a place here. How astonishing. Xiaohei could not help but sigh. Her voice was filled with astonishment. That's right. This style is very different from before. However, I feel much more comfortable here. Xiaobai smiled faintly. Master, I sense a very powerful demonic beast's aura here. You must be careful. Baishir's voice rang out. As a beast king, he was very familiar with the aura of demonic beasts. However, the aura that he sensed was unusually powerful. He could not help but feel worried. Hearing Baishir's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze turned solemn. Since Baishir had warned her, it meant that there could be danger here. Within her line of sight, there was an extremely spacious stone room. It was very different from the layout of the ruins. Everything here was white, as if it was a completely different world. As far as the eye could see, this place was completely empty. There was nothing at all. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked through the stone room as her eyes constantly scanned her surroundings. All she wanted to know was where the aura that Baishir had warned her to be careful of was. At the same time, she was secretly pondering. Since the owner of the ruins had asked her to come here, what could she possibly gain from this place? Just then, a voice suddenly rang out in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Insolent human, how dare you come here? Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned. Her pitch-black, phoenix-like eyes instantly focused as she scanned her surroundings. However, she could not see the other party's figure. Who are you? You don't need to know who I am. All you need to know is that you will soon become my food. Baisha appeared next to Bailey Hongzhuang in an instant and roared at the aura that was approaching her. Roar! The Beast King's aura caused the entire stone room to tremble. Baisha's eyes filled with sternness. Even though he could sense that this aura was very powerful, he would never allow it to attack his master. Beast King? The aura immediately recognized Baisha's identity, and his voice was filled with astonishment. Since when has a Beast King become a human's contract beast? If the previous Beast King finds out about this, he would certainly die of anger. You're none of your business's business. White Lion did not hold back. If you have the ability, then come out and meet me. What kind of ability is it to be cowering there? Little Black and Little White jumped down from Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders, their bodies suddenly becoming bigger. They looked around and said coldly, "Since you don't need to hide from us, then come out, huh?" Chapter 4101. They're actually the Black and White Light Spirits? Upon seeing Xiao He and Xiao Bai, the other party was clearly stunned, and its voice was filled with disbelief. Black and White Light Spirits. Bailey Hongzhuang repeated the other party's words as a look of astonishment flashed in her eyes. Are the Black and White Light Spirits you're talking about Xiao He and Xiao Bai? All this while, she had no idea what kind of mystical beasts Xiao He and Xiao Bai were. Regardless of whether she had flipped through books or asked others, she had not been able to find anything. It was as if such mystical beasts had never appeared in the history of the Shangxian continent. She had always felt that this was very strange. Due to this, she had even specially researched with Long Yanwei. As a sealing master, Long Yanwei had a great understanding of mystical beasts. However, even after researching for a long time, the two of them had been unable to confirm Xiao He and Xiao Bai's identities. They had never heard of such special mystical beasts. Hence, Bailey Hongzhuang had always felt very helpless about this. These two little fellows were also unclear about their own identities. They only remembered that they had always been in the Chaos Ring and knew very little about anything else. However, this time, she had actually heard about Xiao He and Xiao Bai's identities from mystical beast's mouth. This had truly shocked her. That's right. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang felt a gust of wind sweep past her. Soon after, an astonishingly large figure appeared in front of her. A dragon. It's a dragon. Bailey Hongzhuang stared blankly at the figure before her. This was a real dragon, and it was a white dragon. The Dragon Clan had always existed in the Shangxian continent, but they rarely appeared in front of cultivators. Bailey Hongzhuang had always known about the existence of the Dragon Clan, but this was the first time she had actually seen one. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were stunned when they saw that the other party was a dragon. Even though the White Lion had warned them that the other party was very powerful, this dragon's identity was truly unexpected. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the white dragon in front of her. She saw that its entire body was covered in white scales which reflected a resplendent luster under the bright light. She had to admit that this was a very good-looking dragon. She finally understood why the stone room in front of her was so large. Based on the Dragon Clan's reminder, if the stone room was not so large, it would not be able to stay here any longer. However, how could there be such a white dragon in the ruins? Based on her guess, these ruins have been sealed underground for many years. Doesn't this mean that this dragon has been here for many years as well? However, this white dragon was clearly more interested in Xiao He and Xiao Bai. It completely ignored Bailey Hongzhuang and charged directly towards Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Its large dragon head then faced Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Why are you here? Xiao He and Xiao Bai were clearly shocked by the dragon's identity. When they heard the other party's question, they could not help but ask, What do you mean by why are we here? We only knew that there were ruins here, so we accompanied our master to take a look. If we were to ask a question, shouldn't we be asking you why a huge dragon like you is here? Master? The white dragon was a little astonished. Its gaze then landed on Bailey Hongzhuang. She's your master? That's right. Xiao He and Xiao Bai replied. Chapter 4102. How is he not worthy? Xiao Hei placed her hands on her hips. Her face was filled with indignation. Let me tell you, don't think that you're so great just because you're a dragon. Why do you have to look down on my master? A human who has just entered the starlight state not too long ago has become your master. The white dragon shook its head speechlessly. It was obvious that it had just witnessed something unbelievable. Bailey Hongzhuang had been paying attention to the white dragon in front of her. Even though it had looked down on her, she did not mind. In reality, the Dragon Clan was a very powerful existence. The Dragon Clan was different from human cultivators. Humans did not have any cultivation at all and needed to cultivate step by step to increase their cultivation. However, the Dragon Clan was born with great power. Hence, most of the time, humans were very insignificant in front of the Dragon Clan. However, there were also some powerful cultivators who could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Dragon Clan. They could even make a dragon their contracted beast. I'd want to make you my food, but now it seems that you're a little special. The white dragon sized up Bailey Hongzhuang. You're quite capable to be able to make the Beast King and the black and white light spirits your contracted beasts. Bailey Hongzhuang was very calm as the white dragon sized her up. At this moment, she could also sense that the dragon's aura was extremely powerful. However, she could also vaguely sense that the dragon seemed to be injured. Otherwise, based on the dragon's aura and the power it possessed, it should not have been trapped in the ruins for so long. Can you tell me why they're called the black and white light spirits? Are they a species of monstrous beasts? This was what she wanted to understand the most. Hearing this, the white dragon chuckled. A species? No, there's only this pair of black and white light spirits in this world. Just like the Beast King, they're unique. Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood. No wonder no one knew about Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's identities. They were actually unique, monstrous beasts in this world. Then how do you know about them? Can you tell me about their origins? Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask. Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai also said, yes, since you know, tell us. Black and white light spirits. The white dragon muttered Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's names. Then, its aura suddenly changed, and its sharp eyes suddenly became confused. That's right. Why don't I know your names? Why do I feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity towards you? Why is that? Why can't I remember anything? The white dragon stared blankly at everything in front of it. Then, it suddenly transformed into its human form and clutched its head tightly with both hands. How could this be? Who am I? Why am I here? The white dragon screamed and rolled on the ground as if it was in great pain. The dragon's face was extremely ugly. Bailey Hongzhuang and the three beasties stared blankly at this scene, unable to come back to their senses for a moment. What's going on? Xiao Hei was speechless. Initially, she thought that this dragon was extremely dangerous. She never thought that this dragon would torture itself to the point of insanity before they could even do anything. Perhaps this dragon's mental state isn't very good. Xiao Bai shrugged. It was rather speechless about this situation. Chapter 4103. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up the white dragon in front of her, who was almost in a deranged state. Her eyes flickered with a thoughtful light. Master, what are you thinking about? Xiao Hei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had been staring at the black dragon, and her eyes flashed with confusion. It must have been severely injured, and its mental strength has been damaged. That's why it can't remember a lot of things. She had seen this situation before. People whose mental strength had been damaged may not have any problems on normal days, but they would have a splitting headache at the mention of things that they could not remember clearly and end up in a situation like this. It's been severely injured? Xiao Bai was stunned. This dragon's aura is so strong, yet someone was able to severely injure it. Isn't that a little too frightening? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded with certainty. I believe that my judgment is not wrong. Perhaps it's because of this that it has been trapped in this place. Master, the owner of the ruins, said that the possible reward you might have obtained from coming here couldn't be related to this dragon, right? Bai Shi was a little helpless. This dragon in front of him was on the verge of schizophrenia. Could this be considered a reward? Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang looked around and said, "There doesn't seem to be anything else here. I think it's this dragon. But what kind of reward is this? I don't know anything at all." Xiao Hei's eyes widened. This so-called reward had almost cost her life. Although she seemed to have saved her little life, it was completely useless. "I don't know either." Bailey Hongzhuang spread her hands. "The only reward should be that I know your and Xiaobai's names. According to the white dragon, you're a black light spirit, and Xiao Hei should be a white light spirit. I just don't know what that means. It's better than nothing." The corners of Xiao Bai's mouth twitched. Whether they knew this or not did not have much of an impact on them. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked towards the woman who was rolling on the ground. When she got closer, she realized that the white dragon's transformation was very beautiful. It could be said to be a first-class beauty. She placed her hand on the white dragon's pulse. After understanding the situation, she took out a pill and fed it to the white dragon. After taking the pill, the white dragon's mental state gradually recovered and it calmed down. The white dragon looked helplessly at Bailey Hongzhuang. "I had wanted to eat you. Since you've helped me, let's cancel it out." "Hey, white dragon, why do I feel that you have no conscience when you speak?" Blackie looked at the white dragon with dissatisfaction. "You look like you've been locked up here for a long time. You should be happy that we can chat with you. Besides, my master saved you." The white dragon snorted. "You really have a lot of opinions. Be careful, or I'll eat you." "I think you're too hungry. Why do you keep talking about food the moment you open your mouth?" "Xiao Hei." Bailey Hongzhuang called out to Xiao Hei. Xiao Hei then shut her mouth. "White dragon, why are you here?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked tentatively. She really could not figure out the dragon's temper. The only thing she knew was that the possibility of the white dragon killing her was not very high. The prerequisite was that she did not provoke this fellow. Chapter 4104. You don't even know how long you've been in here. Baisha furrowed his brows. Based on their judgment, these ruins have been here for who knows how many years, at least a few hundred years. Doesn't this mean that the white dragon has been trapped here for hundreds of years? Furthermore, it had done so willingly. It's only because dragons have long lives. If it had been any other mystical beast, they might have been waiting for death here. Xiaobai could not help but sigh. The dragon clan had the longest lifespan and could easily live for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. However, the dragon clan also had a problem, and that was the difficulty of reproduction. Therefore, there were very few of them. The heavens were just that fair. If the dragon clan's reproductive abilities were very strong, then the Shengxian continent would belong to the dragon clan. Bailey Hongzhuang gently nodded. Indeed, it's been a long wait. However, I don't know who you're waiting for. The white dragon's expression was rather vacant. I don't know either. As long as someone can take me away, that person will be my master. However, I've been waiting here for so many years, and no one has appeared. You're the first person I've met. Unfortunately, you're very weak. It's impossible for you to take me away from here. Why do you have to look down on my master? My master is already very powerful. Xiao Hei retorted unwillingly. The white dragon shook its head. Perhaps to you, she's not weak at all. However, to me, she's still not strong enough. There's a restrictive spell here. Cultivators of the Starlight Realm can't break it at all. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang understood and said, I hope you'll be able to meet your master soon. I will. The white dragon's expression was resolute. I believe that as long as I wait, she'll appear. Are you the only one here? Is there nothing else? Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with hope as she asked. I'm the only one here. I see. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly rose to her feet. She did not know why the Master of the Ruins had directed her here. Could it be that the Master of the Ruins believes that she's the one who can take the white dragon away? However, with her strength, she couldn't do this at all. Perhaps the owner of the ruins thought too highly of her. After confirming this point, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was somewhat lost. It would be great if Bai Long's mental strength was not damaged. Then, she would be able to learn more about Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai. Unfortunately, There was nothing to be gained now. Now, she could only hope that after they went to the upper realm, they would be able to meet cultivators or monsters who knew something about Xiao He and Xiao Bai. That would solve the confusion in her heart. Let's go back. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three beasts beside her. She had mysteriously disappeared just like that. Everyone must be very worried about her. Since there was nothing to gain here, there was no point for her to continue staying here. She might as well go back. You're leaving now? When the white dragon saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were planning to leave just like that, a trace of loneliness flashed in its eyes. She had stayed here alone for many years. It was really too lonely. It was not easy to meet a few people who could talk to her. She did not expect that they would leave again. She felt a little disappointed. Chapter 4105. It's not easy for me to see someone here. If you're not in a hurry to leave, why don't you stay here and chat with me? I'm simply too bored. After Bailey Hongzhuang had stepped in to save her, the white dragon had let down its guard against Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Since she could not be eaten, she could at least chat with her to relieve her boredom. After they left, she didn't know when the next time she would meet people would be. Seeing the white dragon's lonely expression, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart softened. This fellow had been alone for so many years. It had not been easy. This was also because the dragon clan had a long lifespan and were patient. If it were a human, they would probably go crazy from waiting for such a long time. Master, let's stay here and accompany her for a while. Xiaobai spoke slowly. Putting aside her previous dissatisfaction with the white dragon's attitude, everything else was pretty good. The white dragon nodded as well. Master, why don't you help think of a way to break this restriction? I think that since the master of the ruins had specially instructed you to come here, he must have his reasons. Perhaps you're the person that the white dragon has been waiting for. Impossible. This restriction cannot be broken by someone at the Starlight Realm. The white dragon immediately denied. Xiao He raised her brows. White dragon, you're more powerful. Why don't you try to break this restriction? The white dragon shook her head. I've already tried. I can't break this restriction by myself. It can only be broken by someone else. Don't underestimate my master. She's very powerful. Otherwise, we and the Beast King would not be contracted beasts of my master. The white dragon had not thought much of it at first, but after hearing Xiao He's words, her expression changed. Indeed, the Beast King had always been arrogant. It was the king of the demonic beasts. Logically speaking, it would not care about humans. Who would have thought that it would become a human's contracted beast? Just this point alone was enough to make the white dragon feel incredulous. Although she could not recall the origins of the black and white light spirits, she had the impression that they were very powerful demonic beasts. They would not be easily subdued by human cultivators. For Bailey Hongzhuang to be able to do this, she indeed had some ability. If you can really take me out of here, that would be great. Bai Long shrugged. She had been trapped here for too many years. Now, what she wanted most was to leave this place. If it continued to stay like this, it would soon forget what the outside world was like. She even felt that perhaps she would never be able to wait for the person who could take her away to leave. Bailey Hongzhuang knew that Bai Long wanted to leave this place. She nodded and said, I'll try. Let's see if I can get you out of here. Where is the restriction? Right there. Immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang began to study the restriction, hoping that she could find a way to break it. After Li Buoyou and the others left the ruins, they headed in the direction of the Red Moon sect. During the process, they did not even bother to say goodbye to Wang Yanling and Bai Yingtian. Bai Yingtian and Wang Yanling didn't care about this at all. Li Buoyou had really suffered a double loss this time. After this, they would probably never see each other again. Chapter 4106. Li Buoyou and the others didn't return to the ruins immediately. They walked for a while before stopping. Senior brother, they should have gone far. They won't suspect us anymore. Qian Feilong looked around and said. Li Buoyou's eyes were deep. Wang Yanling is a very cautious person. We should be more careful. Now, he only had one chance to take revenge. If he didn't succeed, it would be very difficult to take revenge in the future. Now that he was a cripple, there was no point in living. He might as well take this opportunity to take revenge for his brother. At least he would have the face to face Li Yunyu when he went to the underworld. That's usually the case. This time, none of us got the inheritance. Plus, something like this happened. I'm afraid he won't think of this. Qian Feilong thought clearly. If it was in the past, Wang Yinling would be very afraid of them. But now, Li Buoyou had become a cripple. Such a Li Buoyou was no threat to Wang Yinling at all. He also didn't think that Li Buoyou, who had become like this, would have the mind to take revenge on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Senior brother Qian is right. They won't follow us anymore. Cheng Jianqing also said. They had walked for hundreds of miles and didn't feel any aura following them. So, they could basically rule out this possibility. Li Buoyou thought for a moment and nodded. Okay, let's go back. This time, I really have to thank everyone. I'm really grateful that you're still willing to help me at this time. Li Buoyou looked at the people around him. He couldn't help them anymore, but they were still willing to help him. This was also because of their past friendship. Senior brother, you've always taken care of us. This time, we didn't want to see it happen. But since it has happened, we can only do our best to help you. But don't worry, we'll definitely do it. Qian Feilong said. Everyone nodded. Li Buoyou had been their leader for so long. Naturally, he had feelings for them. For this matter, everyone must do it cleanly. After you go, try not to let a single person go. That Di Baichen has obtained the inheritance of the Dark Force, and may become extremely powerful in the future. Therefore, our best option is to capture Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in one fell swoop. This way, even if Di Baichen wants to seek revenge in the future, he won't know who did it. Li Buoyou's eyes flashed with a sinister and cold light. Even if he became a cripple, he must bury Bailey Hongzhuang and the others with him. At the very least, this would make him feel better. Mo Yunjue and the others have been waiting in the Great Hall. On one hand, they did not know when Di Baichen would finish accepting the inheritance. On the other hand, they did not know when Bailey Hongzhuang would come out. Therefore, the only thing they could do now was to wait. However, just as they were waiting, the sound of footsteps suddenly entered their ears. Noticing the footsteps, everyone could not help but look at each other. Their eyes flashed with a trace of suspicion. Chapter 4107. Mo Yunjue and the rest looked at each other. It was unbelievable that a team would suddenly appear at such a time. Judging from the footsteps, there are quite a number of people here. Xiren's face darkened. I have a feeling that they are not friendly. Mo Yunjue nodded. Indeed, now that the legacy has ended, the other party has suddenly returned. They might be from Crimson Moon's sect. His dark eyes shone with a solemn light. Although it was just a guess, Mo Yunjue was certain. That was because at such a time, other than the people from Crimson Moon sect, there was no reason for the others to continue to come here. Could it be that Li Buoyou is not satisfied and has come to take revenge on us? Shangwan Yingying suddenly opened her eyes wide. Although she had always wanted to kill Li Buoyou personally, she knew that Crimson Moon sect's team was very powerful. Now that Wang Yinling and the rest were not around, Crimson Moon sect's team had more people than theirs. If they really did return, then this matter would be really troublesome. Everyone looked at each other, but their hearts could not help but sink. Very quickly, Li Buoyou's team appeared in the main hall in a grandiose manner. When he saw that Mo Yunjue and the rest were still there, Li Buoyou could not help but smile proudly. Li Buoyou, why did you come back? Ren Ziheng looked at Li Buoyou coldly. He felt that Li Buoyou was really a scourge. Why did I come back? Li Buoyou chuckled. Naturally, I came back to take your lives. With Li Buoyou's words, everyone's faces suddenly changed. Even though they had already guessed this, their hearts still couldn't help but sink when they saw Li Buoyou's stance. However, after Li Buoyou sized up Mo Yunjue and the rest, he realized that Bailey Hongzhuang was not in the team. He could not help but frown and said, "Where's Bailey Hongzhuang?" "I'm not telling you," Shangwan Yingying said coldly. "Not telling me?" Li Buoyou snorted. "When you're about to die, I'd like to see what you'll tell me." In the next moment, Li Boyo directly shot a glance at Qian Feilong and the others by his side and said, "Don't leave a single one alive. Kill them." Qian Feilong and the others immediately drew their weapons and stared at Mo Yunjue and the others. Clearly, they had locked onto their opponents. Mo Yunjue's group of 7 looked at each other. Originally, Li Boyo's team had more than 20 people. Even though a few of them had died, there were still 18 people left. Excluding Li Boyo, each of them had to deal with 2 people. Moreover, the other party was not a simple team. They were the strongest team in the Crimson Moon sect. Earlier, when they were fighting with Skeleton, they already had an understanding of their opponent's strength. The Crimson Moon sect had a total of 5 cultivators at the Astral Radiance realm and above. On the other hand, their team only had Mo Yunjue. Aside from the Astral Realm cultivators, most of them were either at the 8th or 9th level of the Purple Realm. In comparison, the strength of their team was too weak. If we fight them head-on, we're no match for them at all. Xiren's face darkened. He did not expect Li Boyo to be so despicable. Previously, they pretended to leave in order to deceive Wan Yin Ling and the others. They purposely waited until the other party left before returning. Chapter 4108. Indeed, Ren Ziheng nodded. With such a huge disparity in strength, they were practically doomed. The only thing we can do now is to run. Even though the situation before them was extremely grim, Mo Yunjue was still very calm. We'll split up and try our best to scatter their team. At least this way, we'll have some chance of survival. They knew very well that if they faced the enemy head-on with their current strength, they would definitely be wiped out. On the other hand, if they split up and fled, at least there would be some hope of leaving alive. That's the only thing we can do now. Xiren's eyes were malicious and ruthless. I really can't take this lying down. That's a good idea. As long as we run out, they won't be guarding here. I hope they won't find Hong Zhuang. Shangguan Yingying's expression was complicated. It would be very difficult for them to survive this time. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't here, she could only hope that Bailey Hongzhuang would be safe. Mo Yunjue and the others looked solemn. Bailey Hongzhuang was different from Di Beichun. Di Beichun had received the inheritance and wouldn't be done for a while. However, Bailey Hongzhuang could come out at any time. Therefore, they could only pray that Bailey Hongzhuang would be safe. You don't have to think of a way. Today, all of you will die. Li Boyo looked coldly at Mo Yunjue and the others in front of him. He didn't mind giving them some time. After all, they would all go to see the King of Hell today. Li Boyo, you'll die a horrible death. Shangguan Yingying cursed. That's none of your business. Anyway, you'll all die first. Li Boyo waved his hand and said, "Kill them all. Remember to ask them about Bailey Hongzhuang's whereabouts." In this entire team, the ones he wanted to kill the most were Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. However, Di Beichun had received the inheritance of the Dark Force. It would be very difficult to deal with him in the future, so he decided not to think about it. He didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't here at the moment. This was really out of his expectations. Kill! Qian Feilong and the others didn't waste any more time. They immediately brandished their weapons and charged forward. The battle broke out in an instant, and the two sides immediately exchanged blows. Li Boyo and the rest obviously knew that Mo Yunjue was the strongest person in their group. Other than him, who was in the Astral Radiance realm, the others were not a concern. Therefore, they directly sent 2 Astral Boundary cultivators to surround and attack Mo Yunjue. As soon as Mo Yunjue exchanged blows, he discovered that one of the opponents was a level 4 Astral Radiance warrior, while the other was a level 2 Astral Radiance warrior. Under the siege of these 2 people, it was not easy for him to escape. Everyone did as they had thought before. Even if their strength was no match for the other party, they would still try their best to escape from this ruin. As long as they managed to escape, they might still have a chance to live. Everyone's will to live was incomparably strong. Therefore, everyone exploded with their strongest strength in that instant, using their fastest speed to escape outside. Catch them, don't let them escape. Li Boyo hurriedly shouted. This was a battle where they had an overall advantage. If they let the other party escape, it would be too much of a pity. Chapter 4109. The White Dragon was chatting happily with the three beasties. It had not talked to a demon beast for a long time. Now that there was finally someone to talk to, it was naturally very happy. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the four beasties who were chatting happily. She could not help but smile. Sure enough, demon beasts had more in common with other demon beasts. The White Dragon's attitude was so unfriendly to her before, but it was quite friendly to the three beasties. After the White Dragon's reminder, she had already found the existence of the restriction. Sure enough, this restriction was just as the White Dragon had said. It required an extremely powerful force to break it. She had tried to use her strongest force to attack this restriction, but unfortunately, it did not have any effect. After she attacked, the restriction did not even have the slightest ripple. It was clear that her strength was too insignificant to this restriction. I didn't expect this restriction to be so strong. Bailey Hongzhuang looked emotional. Sure enough, cultivators who could take a dragon away must be extremely powerful. The White Dragon glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and said lazily, I told you, without enough strength, it's impossible to break this restriction. If you want to break this restriction, I'm afraid you'll have to cultivate for many more years. White Dragon, why do I see that you're so calm? Xiaohei looked at it in confusion. If my master can't help you break this restriction, you'll have to continue to stay here after we leave. The White Dragon sighed helplessly. I don't want to, but there's no other way. I knew from the beginning that your master won't be able to help me break this restriction, so I'm more calm. After all, it did not have much hope in the first place, so naturally, it was not disappointed. Have you tried to walk out yourself? Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask. The White Dragon nodded. I've tried, but every time I try, I'll be fiercely attacked by it. So I gave up. Why don't you try to attack this restriction with me? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. No. The White Dragon resisted. This restriction is very powerful. The last time I tried it, I was in a coma for a few years. I don't want to try it again. It doesn't feel good. How many years has he been unconscious for? Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. This White Dragon should be very strong, but this restriction could make the White Dragon unconscious for so long. Wasn't it too powerful? Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's incredulous expression, the White Dragon couldn't help but explain, actually, this restriction isn't that exaggerated. It's just that I've been in prison here all these years, so my body is a little weak. Also, I seem to have suffered a serious injury, and I haven't recovered from it yet. You don't look like bad people, so I'll tell you directly. In fact, although my aura is still very strong, I've lost a lot of my strength and will need some time to recover. What's more, since I've already tried and there's no effect, I'm afraid there won't be any effect even if I add your power. White Dragon, even if there's a glimmer of hope, we still have to try. Xiaohei couldn't help but say. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand slightly. Since the consequences are so serious, let's just forget about it. If the White Dragon was to sleep for a few years because of this, she would feel guilty. Chapter 41:10. The White Dragon sighed. If I'm only unconscious for a few years, it's no big deal to me. However, what if I meet someone who can take me away while I'm unconscious? Wouldn't that be terrible? Sometimes I even wonder if the reason why I haven't met anyone who can take me away for so many years is because I missed the last time I fainted. Looking at the White Dragon's pondering face, Xiaohei couldn't help but chuckle. I think you're thinking too much. If someone really did come and saw an unconscious dragon like you, they might just cook you and eat you. It's said that dragon meat is a great tonic for humans. Even if they didn't eat you, they would at least take away 2 dragon scales. Hearing this, the White Dragon didn't get angry. Actually, what you said makes sense. I'll try to figure out if we can avoid this restrictive spell and get out. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the restrictive spell again. She understood that the White Dragon was certain that she wouldn't be able to bring it out. However, she didn't care. There was no harm in trying anyway. Besides, Beichen wanted to accept the inheritance, and it wasn't something that could be completed in a day or two. It wasn't a bad idea for her to stay here and accompany the white dragon who was about to suffocate to death. After Mo Yunjue and the others escaped from the ruins, they immediately split into 3 groups and ran in different directions. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were in one group, Mo Yunjue and Ao Lingxiao were in another group. Rin Ziheng, Run Zimei, and Chu Jinfeng were in another group. Qian Feilong and the others chased after them and saw that they were running in 3 different directions. Since they had promised Li Boyo, they couldn't leave anyone alive. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying ran as fast as they could, their faces were ugly. Once the other party caught up to them, it would be too difficult to face the enemy head-on. So, the best way was to prevent the other party from catching up to them. Damn it, there's nothing to hide in this broken place. It's too difficult to avoid being killed. Shangwan Yingying cursed as she ran. If they were in another place, they might be able to avoid the other party. Unfortunately, not a single blade of grass grew in this training ground. They were simply too conspicuous here. Yingying, if they catch up to us later, I will try my best to stop them for a while. Don't look back, just run, understand? Xiren's expression was solemn and nervous. A complicated light flickered in the depths of his eyes, and his tone was unusually serious. It would be too difficult for them to escape today, but no matter what, he would risk his life to protect Shangwan Yingying. Hearing Xiren's words, Shangwan Yingying quickly shook her head. No, I will never leave you alone. Yingying, you have to listen to me. The Crimson Moon Sex team is very strong. Even though we are good at speed, their cultivation level is higher than ours, and their speed will only be faster than ours. It is almost impossible for us to escape from their pursuit. The only thing I can do is to hold them back for as long as possible. This is our only chance. No. Shangwan Yingying shook her head with all her might. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her voice was sobbing. You said that you would stay with me no matter what. You can't abandon me like this. I'd rather die with you than live alone. Chapter 4111. Ever since she embarked on the path of cultivation, she knew that it was very likely that she would lose her life. However, when the scene was right in front of her eyes, what hurt her the most was that she could no longer be with Xiren. Even if it meant death, she was not afraid. As long as she could be with Xiren, that was all that mattered. Yingying, when Xiren frowned, between his brows, there was a hint of emotion and reluctance. Don't say such silly things. You have to listen to me later. As long as you're alive, you can avenge me in the future. Shangwan Yingying couldn't control her tears. But what if when that time comes, I can't find you in the underworld? Don't be silly. I'll always be waiting for you. So you have to live well. Do you understand? When Xiren held Shangwan Yingying's hand tightly, his eyes were slightly red. The person he was most worried about was Shangwan Yingying. However, at a time like this, he could no longer think about the future. Shangwan Yingying's eyes were still red, but she didn't answer. She couldn't imagine how bleak the world would be without Xiren. Don't waste your energy running away. None of you will be able to escape today. Cheng Jianqing looked at the 2 figures in front of him who were running away quickly. There was a hint of mockery in his voice. Previously, these guys had almost caused him to lose his life. Fortunately, the initiative was now in his hands. He was very happy. Don't talk nonsense. Just kill them. Another cultivator said. I heard that they have a good position in the Panlai Palace. They might have a lot of treasures on them. The sooner we kill them, the better. When Xiren looked at the 4 cultivators in front of him, if he remembered correctly, one of them should be at the 1st level of the Star Realm, one at the 9th level of the Purple Realm, and 2 at the 8th level of the Purple Realm. He and Shangwan Yingying were both at the 8th level of the Purple Realm. Facing 2 8th level Purple Realm cultivators and 1 9th level Purple Realm cultivator, they could still fight. However, facing a Star Realm cultivator was a lot of pressure for them. The gap between the Purple Realm and the Starlight Realm was not small. Moreover, he still had to face 4 cultivators. Even if he fought with his life on the line, he probably wouldn't stand a chance. Yingying, I'll hold him back. You find an opportunity to escape. When Xiren said, Shangguan Yingying stubbornly shook her head. No, leave the revenge to Beichen and Hong Zhuang. They will definitely avenge us. Now, I want to fight alongside you. Even if we die, we will die together. Yingying. Xiren frowned. He didn't expect Shangguan Yingying to be so stubborn at this time. Xiren, you don't have to say anything more. I've already decided on this matter. Shangguan Yingying's expression was firm and resolute. The worst that could happen is death. When we decided to come to Penglai Island, weren't we already mentally prepared for this? If I was afraid of death, I wouldn't have insisted on coming here with you. Now that I'm here, I will definitely be with you. Shangguan Yingying's delicate and fair face shone with a resolute light. A smile even appeared on her lips. In this life, being able to meet you is already my greatest fortune. Moreover, although the situation in front of us is very troublesome, it's not like we don't have any strength to fight. Chapter 41:12. Please enter the text. Shangguan Yingying's eyes were filled with viciousness. Even though they were already at a disadvantage, if the other party wanted to take their lives, they would let the other party know that they were not easy to chew on. If the other party wanted to kill them, they would have to pay the price. Seeing Shangguan Yingying's determined look, Xiren's eyes changed a little. Then he nodded affirmatively. All right, since you've said so, then let's fight together. They had to be together in life, and they had to be together in death. Now that even Shangguan Yingying was fearless, what was there for him to be afraid of? Cheng Jianxing and the others looked at Shangguan Yingying and Xiren's resolute faces and found it funny. Since the two of you are so deeply in love, then I'll let the two of you die together. Unfortunately, no matter how deep your love is, it's useless. In the end, you'll still die in this place filled with skeletons. You damn bastard. It's all because of you. Shangguan Yingying stared at Cheng Jianxing. She remembered very clearly that if it weren't for Cheng Jianxing, Li Boyo wouldn't have come looking for them, and naturally, they wouldn't be in so much trouble now. Don't blame me. Cheng Jianxing sneered. I did see that incident with my own eyes. This isn't something you can deny just because you want to. An eye for an eye. I can only say that you have to pay the price for what you've done. Even if I'm going to die, I'll drag you down with me. Shangguan Yingying's gaze was fierce and ruthless. Her dark red eyes stared at Cheng Jianxing, as if she couldn't wait to skin him alive. After Cheng Jianxing noticed Shangguan Yingying's gaze, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. This bastard's gaze was really terrifying. In the next moment, the battle between the two parties erupted. Shangguan Yingying directly fought with Cheng Jianxing, while Xiren fought with the Purple Realm 8th level and the Purple Realm 9th level cultivator. Originally, when Xiren thought that as long as that Star Radiance Realm cultivator made a move, their situation would definitely become very bad. However, he did not expect that the cultivator would not even bother to attack them. He merely stood aside and watched the show, leaving the matter to Cheng Jianxing and the other two to settle. Noticing this, Xiren couldn't help but feel secretly delighted. As long as the other party watched the show for a while longer, they would have more hope. Many people lost because of their carelessness. As long as the other party continued to be so careless, there might be a chance to change the outcome. Bang, bang, bang. The five of them quickly clashed together. As their origin energy collided, one after another, martial skills exploded out continuously. Xiren and Shangguan Yingying had grown up together, and they usually cultivated together, so when the two of them worked together, their fighting strength was very outstanding. It was precisely because of this that the two of them were able to withstand the attacks of the other three without falling into a disadvantageous position under such circumstances. Cheng Jianxing and the others obviously didn't expect such a situation to occur, and their expressions immediately turned ugly. I was still wondering how strong you were. It turns out that you're completely at the bottom of this team. Xiren directly stabbed Cheng Jianxing with his sword. This meddlesome bastard had become the person they hated the most. Chapter 41:13. Cheng Jianqing could also feel Shangwan Yingying and Xiren's murderous intent towards him. A haze flashed across his eyes as he panicked. He had thought that he could easily get rid of them. However, he did not expect the two of them to be so powerful when they joined forces. It had completely exceeded his expectations. Now, he had been injured by them, even though he had the advantage in numbers. This was really embarrassing. He even felt that if this continued, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying might really kill him. Mu Zhe, hurry up and help. Cheng Jianqing turned to look at Mu Zhe, who was watching the show. Mu Zhe was the only Starlight Jing expert among the four of them. As long as Mu Zhe intervened, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying would definitely die. Hearing Cheng Jianqing's words, Mu Zhe glanced at him lazily. There was disdain and contempt between his brows. Cheng Jianqing, the other party's cultivation is not any weaker than yours. However, you can't even handle them. This level of strength is really terrible. I'm giving you a chance to improve. Fighting with them is a good way to train your battle power. Mu Zhe still had his arms crossed in front of his chest. It was obvious that he was planning to continue watching the show. He had no intention of intervening immediately. Seeing Mu Zhe like this, Cheng Jianqing's expression turned extremely ugly. He could not help but curse in his heart. This damned fellow. He's purposely trying to see me get injured. Cheng Jianqing knew very well that many people were dissatisfied with his decision to join Li Boyo's team. After all, his strength could only be considered average in the Crimson Moon sect. There was still a large gap between him and Li Boyo's team, which was at the top. It was only because he had provided Li Boyo with information that Li Boyo had agreed to let him join the team. Even so, there were still many cultivators in the team who looked down on him. Mu Zhe was one of them. Now that Li Boyo had become a cripple, there was no way for him to take care of him in the future. That was why Mu Zhe had done this. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying could not help but look at each other when they saw this. They never thought that there would be some conflict between the four of them. This had given them an opportunity. Yingying, we have to seize this opportunity. Shangwan Yingying nodded, and the ruthlessness in her eyes intensified. All right, bang. Xiren and Shangwan Yingying unleashed a joint martial skill at the same time. A tyrannical burst of energy erupted, and an incomparably dazzling golden light quietly appeared and mercilessly attacked Cheng Jianqing. Noticing this terrifying light, Cheng Jianqing couldn't help but widen his eyes. His eyes were filled with shock. Such a terrifying force had completely exceeded the limits of what he could endure. After the other two cultivators noticed this scene, their faces flashed with shock. They did not expect that Xiren and Shangwan Yingying's combined martial skill would be so powerful. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion resounded, and a violent force directly blasted Cheng Jianqing's entire body, flying backward. Poochie! After falling to the ground, Cheng Jianqing involuntarily coughed out a mouthful of blood. Immediately after that, his aura weakened. From the looks of it, he didn't have long to live. The other two cultivators were lucky to have dodged in time. Otherwise, their fates would not be much better than Cheng Jianqing's. Chapter 41:14. Cheng Jianqing stared blankly at when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying not far away. He never thought that he would lose his life at a time like this. This was clearly a sure-win situation, but why did it end up like this? Looking at the burning anger and hatred in the other party's eyes, he could not help but feel a little regretful. If he had known that this would be the outcome, he would not have told Li Boyo about this. If that was the case, there wouldn't be so many things happening. After Cheng Jianqing's death, Mu Zhe and the other two cultivators only glanced at him indifferently, their expressions indifferent. This guy had only joined their team later on. They did not have any feelings for Cheng Jianqing at all. On the contrary, they only thought that Cheng Jianqing's joining had lowered their standards. Now that Li Boyo could no longer stay in this team, it was good that Cheng Jianqing was dead. He was not suitable to stay here at all. Mu Zhe slowly walked in front of when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying. All right, I've fulfilled one of your wishes and let Cheng Jianqing be your scapegoat. Now that Cheng Jianqing is dead, it's time for you to die together. After all, this is what we promised eldest senior brother." Hearing Mu Zhe's words, Shangwan Yingying and Wen Ziren could not help but feel their hearts sink. It seemed that Mu Zhe was going to make a move. Li Boyo is now a cripple? Why would you attack us for a cripple like him? To be honest, what we can give you is much more than what Li Boyo can give you now. When Ziren stared at Mu Zhe, he wanted to try and see if he could persuade the other party. After all, as long as he could keep his life, that was enough. Eldest senior brother does not have much ability now, but he has helped me a lot in the past. Even if it's for the sake of our past friendship, I should still help him complete this last task. Mu Zhe slowly said, "That's nothing more than friendship," when Ziren said slowly, "He helped you, but didn't you help him as well? As long as you let us go, we will definitely give you something that you will be satisfied with." Mu Zhe chuckled. "Don't talk to me about these useless things. As long as I kill you, your things will also be mine." "No." Ziren shook his head. Mu Zhe frowned. "What do you mean? You should know that Hong Zhuang is an outstanding doctor and has made such a great contribution to Penglai Palace. She has the most treasures. As long as you let us go, we can give you our Chinquan bags and give you a lot of spirit stones. With these spirit stones and cultivation resources, your chances of success in the future will be greater. This is definitely a good thing." Shang Waningying also said, "Hong Zhuang and I are like sisters. We don't distinguish between you and me. As long as we ask for something from Hong Zhuang, she will definitely agree. Rather than helping a cripple who is of no help to you, why don't you agree with us? This way, your path will be smoother." When Ziren and Shang Waningying looked at each other, at present, they could only think of ways to deceive the other party. At least they could delay it for a while. After all, after the previous battle, they had consumed a lot of Yuan Li. They could take advantage of this time to recover a little. Chapter 41:15. The currently Boyo was indeed of no help to them. On the contrary, spirit stones were indeed what cultivators needed the most. Even though they were the strongest team in Penglai Palace, they still had to work hard to obtain enough cultivation resources. However, with their current need for spirit stones, the number was still not enough. It was precisely because of this that they had to think of other ways to earn spirit stones. After all, in order to maintain their current status, their strength must be steadily improved. Otherwise, if they were slightly slower, others would catch up to them. This was not a result they wanted to see. When Ziren and Shangwan Yingying saw that the other party did not refuse immediately. On the contrary, they began to think about it and were secretly delighted. Li Boyo believed that he still had that kind of appeal, but in fact, from the moment his Dantian was destroyed, his previous appeal had disappeared. This world had always been so cruel. As long as you had no strength, you were a complete waste. If the other party helped you because of old feelings, that was affection. However, if the other party did not care about old feelings, that was also their duty. Mu Zhe looked at Wen Ziren and Shangwan Yingying in front of him and said, "Why should I believe what you said?" "I can swear." Wen Ziren said, "I can give you the Chinquan bag now. As for what we promised you, we will definitely do it. What's more, you are so strong that we are no match for you at all. If we don't fulfill our promise, you can come to us." "What if you stay in Penglai Palace and don't come out?" Mu Zhe asked in a deep voice. "Impossible. No matter who it is impossible to stay in one place and not come out. In addition, we have to come to the training ground on weekdays. Even if we can hide for a while, can we hide for a lifetime?" When Ziren said. At this time, another cultivator next to Mu Zhe said, "Words are no guarantee. You can write down how many spirit stones you owe us on the note now. This way, if you go back on your word, we can take this note and go to Penglai Palace." Hearing this, Mu Zhe's eyes lit up and he immediately nodded. "Not bad. This is a good idea." As a cultivator, face was the most important thing to them. If someone were to come knocking on their door like this, it would be extremely embarrassing. He believed that under such circumstances, Ziren and Wan Jiabao would not dare to go back on their word. "All right, no problem." Ziren nodded. Right now, the most important thing for them was to stay alive. Everything else was secondary. After when Zyron finished writing the note and handed it to Muse's eyes flashed with a hint of satisfaction when he saw the number of spirit stones written on it. This amount of spiritual stones was truly a huge sum of money. He had long heard that Bailey Hongzhuang of Penglai Palace was the richest. With these spirit stones, he could catch up with other practitioners in the future. We'll let you off today. However, you have to leave this place immediately. Don't let anyone from the Crimson Moon sect discover you, Muse said in a deep voice. Don't worry, we'll leave immediately. When Zyron and Shangwan Yingying looked at each other before the two of them quickly left. After when Zyron and Shangwan Yingying left, the two cultivators could not help but look at Muse. Muse, if we let them go just like that, will we? Chapter 41:16. Please enter the text. They knew very well that Li Boyo would no longer be a disciple of the Crimson Moon sect after this trip. It would be very difficult for him to continue staying on the Penglai Island, and he would have to return to the outside world. Under such circumstances, what else could Li Boyo say? Instead of being thanked by someone who had no future, it would be better for them to get some substantial rewards. This would be better for their future. Moreover, we don't know where Bailey Hongzhuang is. If Bailey Hongzhuang is not dead this time and survives. If that happens, we might have to endure Bailey Hongzhuang's crazy revenge. A powerful doctor's appeal is not small. I don't intend to get into such trouble for a cripple. Hearing Muse's words, the other two cultivators nodded. Muse, you're right. That's the best way. On one hand, they would gain enough benefits. On the other hand, the other party would not hold a grudge. It was a win-win situation. After Zyron and Shangwan Yingying had distanced themselves, both of them felt a little relieved. Zyron, it's all thanks to you that we managed to convince them. Otherwise, if we were to fight, our situation would not be optimistic. Shangwan Yingying could not help but sigh. Her eyes shone with excitement. Just dealing with Cheng Jianxing and the other two had already exhausted a lot of their energy. If Muse were to intervene, they would not have any hope of winning. They did not expect that Zyron would only move his lips and they would be able to escape from such a dangerous situation. Until now, she still felt as if she was in a dream. It did not feel real at all. When Zyron chuckled, actually, this situation isn't strange. Li Boyo no longer has any meaning to these people. They only chose to help because of their past relationship with him. However, when it came to friendship and benefits, it was much weaker. We were lucky. Although these people have a certain level of friendship with Li Boyo, it is not very deep. That's why we took advantage of this loophole. If we had met someone who had a good relationship with Li Boyo, I'm afraid it would not have been so easy. Shangwan Yingying nodded slightly. Indeed. What should we do now? Yunju, Zimei, and the others are probably still in danger. If they left like this, the two of them would naturally be safe. However, Imo, Yunjue, Runzime, and the others would still be in danger. However, once they joined in, they might also be in danger. Let's go find them. Zyron's eyes flashed with a resolute and determined light. They were a team, so they naturally could not abandon each other. Moreover, according to their previous situation, the number of people chasing them was basically twice their number. If the two of them joined in, then the other party's advantage would not be so obvious, and they might even have a chance of survival. Okay. Shangwan Yingying's eyes were as bright as the stars. This was also her idea. The next moment, when Zyron and Shangwan Yingying began to look around, they only remembered that the three teams had run in different directions. Now, they couldn't immediately find each other's location. They could only look around and hope to find each other as soon as possible. Chapter 41:17. Ren Ziheng, Run Zimei, and Chu Jinfeng fled as the pursuers behind them relentlessly chased after them. There were only 3 of them, but the pursuers behind them had 5 people. Among them, 4 of them were about the same strength as them, but there was still an astral radiance realm cultivator. This made them feel even more pressured. If it was Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, they might not feel too anxious when facing such an opponent. However, they did not have the abnormal battle prowess of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Hence, it was practically impossible for them to escape from such a situation. Stop running. You can't escape anymore. Qian Feilong looked at the three figures bitterly, trying to survive, as a trace of disdain and indifference surfaced in his eyes. Ren Ziheng and the others looked at each other as their expressions became extremely ugly. An indescribable panic spread in their hearts, but they did not stop because of this. Seeing that Ren Ziheng and the others were still fleeing, Qian Feilong's figure flew and blocked their path. I've already said that none of you can escape. Rather than stubbornly resisting like this, you might as well just kill yourselves. At least this way, you will have a quick death. Seeing this, Ren Ziheng and the others were forced to stop. The pursuers had practically surrounded them in an instant. Qian Feilong, there is no enmity between us. Why must you force us to do this? Ren Ziheng's expression was ugly. As a rather famous cultivator in the Crimson Moon sect, Ren Ziheng naturally knew of Qian Feilong's reputation. However, he never imagined that there would be a day when they would cross paths like this. There is indeed no enmity between us. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for being in the same group as Bailey Hongzhuang. The reason why you have ended up like this is because you've been dragged down by her. Qian Feilong shrugged his shoulders. He had no interest in Ren Ziheng and the others. To him, these fellows were not even worthy of being called opponents. Using them to deal with them would only be a waste of time. I'll give you a chance now. End yourselves. At least you can preserve some dignity. Otherwise, once you fall into our hands, you will suffer a little. Qian Feilong said coldly. Ren Ziheng and the others looked at each other, and their expressions revealed struggle and hesitation. They knew very clearly in their hearts that they weren't a match for Qian Feilong, who was at the Starlight Realm. However, they were also unable to accept the fact that they had to self-destruct like this. At this time, Chu Jinfeng gave Ren Ziheng and the other two a meaningful glance. He quietly took out something with his right hand and shouted, "Run!" Although Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei did not react to what Chu Jinfeng had taken out, with their tacit understanding, they did not hesitate to run forward when Chu Jinfeng shouted that word. Qian Feilong and the others naturally didn't expect Chu Jinfeng to take out something at this time. However, Qian Feilong's reaction speed was also very fast. When he saw Chu Jinfeng move, he quickly retreated a little. Boom! An earth-shattering sound rang out, and the ground where Chu Jinfeng and the others had been standing had been blasted into a huge crater. Smoke and dust filled the air. The Crimson Moon sect cultivators who were closer to the crater were immediately sent flying by the explosion. Although Qian Feilong had sensed that something was amiss and had retreated a little, the area of effect was very wide. He was still injured. Chapter 41:18. At the same time, Chu Jinfeng and the other two quickly ran away. This was their only chance. After hearing the huge commotion behind them, Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei could not help but gasp in amazement. Clearly, they did not expect Chu Jinfeng to have such a trick up his sleeve. Jinfeng, are these the explosives that junior sister Bailey had made? Ren Zimei immediately recognized the source of these things. When they had first seen Bailey Hongzhuang using these explosives, they had been deeply shocked by its effects. Chu Jinfeng nodded gently. Junior sister Bailey had made some previously, and I had kept a copy with me in case of an emergency. I never thought that I would actually have to use it this time. The power of these explosives is truly extraordinary. Ren Ziheng's eyes were filled with admiration. Bailey Hongzhuang was truly a genius to have been able to make such explosives. However, Qian Feilong and the others are no ordinary people either. I hope that these explosives can seriously injure them. Otherwise, once they catch up to us, I'm afraid that our situation will become even worse. Big brother, we've already come this far. How bad can it get? At most, we'll lose our lives. At this moment, Runzime had become much calmer. The other party had wanted their lives in the first place. Now that they had come this far, the worst that could happen was that they would lose their lives. On the contrary, as long as they could make the other party pay a price, that would be good enough. You're right. Ren Ziheng nodded. I hope that we can take advantage of this opportunity to escape. Ren Ziheng and the other two unleashed their greatest speed and fled forward. At this moment, they felt a little depressed. The teleportation formation was so far away from them. If they were close enough, they would still have a chance of survival. However, the teleportation formation was so far away that it would be difficult for them to reach it. If the other party were to catch up to them during this period of time, they would be completely finished. When Qian Feilong and the others regained their senses, they realized that they were all injured. Qian Feilong's arm was dripping with blood. His eyes were gloomy and vicious. I didn't expect these guys to have such powerful treasures. Damn it. The situation of the other four cultivators was even worse than Qian Feilong's. One of the cultivators had been seriously injured by the explosion and his aura had already withered. Even though he had consumed a life-saving elixir immediately, his complexion did not improve at all. Another cultivator's legs were injured by the explosion and he fell to the ground, unable to stand up. Senior brother Qian, you must avenge us. The cultivator whose legs were injured had an ugly expression on his face. He had thought that he could toy with the other party for a while, but he did not expect that they would fail miserably and pay such a huge price. Qian Feilong felt embarrassed when he saw them like this. He immediately nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'll definitely kill them." Immediately after, only 3 people were left from the original 5-man team. However, compared to their previous rather lazy appearance, the eyes of the 3 people were now filled with killing intent. As long as they caught up to him, they would kill him immediately. Chapter 4119. Please enter the text, damn it. They're catching up again. Chu Jinfeng's face was gloomy and his eyes were filled with despair. He could feel the other party's aura getting closer and closer. His wishful thinking had been extinguished as the other party had caught up. Ren Ziheng and Run Zime's faces were also ashen. At this moment, they really had no other choice. Forget it. Since we've already come this far, there's nothing we can do. Why don't we just fight? At most, we'll be men again after 18 years. Ren Ziheng steeled his heart, and his eyes became sharp and resolute. As a cultivator, he had long been prepared to lose his life at any time. Rather than cowering and dying, it was better to fight fair and square. This way, at least their deaths would be worth it. Ren Zime nodded, all right, let's fight to the death with these despicable bastards. Chu Jinfeng looked at Ren Ziheng and Run Zime beside him and said, "You two run first. I'll think of a way to draw them away and give you a chance to live." Hearing Chu Jinfeng's words, Run Ziheng and Ren Zime were stunned and immediately rejected Chu Jinfeng's suggestion. No, why not? Chu Jinfeng quickly said, "Since we've already prepared to die, if I die alone, the 3 of us die together, we die too. Why don't you let me fight and see if I can buy you some time? As long as you can successfully escape, my sacrifice will be worth it. From the aura of the other party, there's still some distance away from us. I'll raise my aura and draw them in another direction while you two run for your lives. Do you understand?" Chu Jinfeng's expression was resolute and resolute. He had already thought of this. As a man, his strength may not be comparable to others, but he would definitely do his best to protect the woman he loved. "Jinfeng, you can't." Ren Zime quickly shook her head, her expression becoming incomparably resolute. Chu Jinfeng's lips curled into a smile. "Zime, I've said before that no matter what, I'll protect you. For you to agree to be with me is the happiest thing that has happened to me in all these years. Although we haven't been together for long, it's already very satisfying for me. I don't know if I can let you live by doing this, but I will do my best." He knew very well that he was no match for Qian Feilong and the others. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to try his best to delay them, hoping to fight for a chance for Ren Zime and the others. "I don't agree. Rinzime was very determined. Tears quietly appeared in her eyes. Although she had always liked to say that Chu Jinfeng was indecent and unreliable, at this moment, what Chu Jinfeng had done shocked and touched her heart. An indescribable feeling of gratitude spread through her heart. It was this guy who usually didn't behave properly, who was willing to risk his life for her at this time. When Chu Jinfeng saw Ren Zime's state, he couldn't help but turn his gaze to Ren Ziheng. Ziheng, I'll leave Zime to you. You must find a way to survive. Ren Ziheng frowned. His eyes were bloodshot, but in the end he nodded. All right. He couldn't let down Chu Jinfeng's good intentions. Now wasn't the time to think about all this. As long as there was a chance of survival, he had to fight for it. Chapter 41:20. Please enter the text. The next moment, Chu Jinfeng glanced at Ren Zime reluctantly, and then quickly turned in another direction. At the same time, the traces of his aura also became stronger. Seeing Chu Jinfeng leave like this, Ren Zime's tears suddenly burst out, and she hurriedly shouted, Jinfeng. However, Chu Jinfeng seemed to have made up his mind and disappeared from Ren Zime and Ren Zime's sight without looking back. Ren Ziheng pulled Ren Zime and quickly left, saying, Zime, you must not disappoint Jinfeng's good intentions. Now, as long as you can still live, that is the best. Ren Zime left in another direction under Ren Ziheng's strength, but her tears could not help falling. The scenes of her time with Chu Jinfeng flashed across her mind one by one, causing her heart to tremble constantly. She could not help but regret. If she had known, she would have treated Chu Jinfeng better. At least, she would not have left the regrets today. Or, if she died with Chu Jinfeng like this, perhaps she would be more relieved. Otherwise, facing such a Chu Jinfeng, how could she be happy? Not long after Ren Ziheng and Ren Zime left, they heard the fluctuation of essence power coming from afar. The two people's hearts immediately sank. They understood that Chu Jinfeng had been caught up by the other party. Ren Zime could not help but sob, her heart aching to the extreme. Ren Ziheng looked at Ren Zime's appearance, and a trace of struggle flashed in his eyes, saying, Zime, do you want to go back? He was very clear that the relationship between Ren Zime and Chu Jinfeng did not come easily. They had known each other for so long, and it was only during this period of time that they truly got together. Even though this time together was not considered very long, their feelings were extremely deep. Hearing Ren Ziheng's words, Ren Zime was slightly stunned, then nodded and said, yes. Even if the result after going was death, she was also willing, as long as she could die together with Chu Jinfeng. Okay, then let's go back together, Ren Ziheng said. He found that he also could not harden his heart and could not watch Chu Jinfeng die for them. If they were together, at least they could still fight. As early as when he had just joined Penglai Palace, he had already become friends with Chu Jinfeng. After these years of getting along, they were already real brothers. If he was so afraid of death, he would not be able to forgive himself. Big brother, you should go. I will go alone, Ren Zime said. She no longer cared about life and death, but she could not implicate Ren Ziheng. Ren Ziheng smiled faintly. Now that things have come to this, could it be that I can still let my little sister go alone? Let's go together. No matter what the result is, we have to give it our all. Big brother. Ren Zime's eyes were red. This feeling was too painful. On one side was Chu Jinfeng, and on the other was Ren Ziheng. She really couldn't make up her mind. Don't think too much. Let's go back. It's fine as long as we don't regret it. Ren Ziheng looked at Ren Zime with eyes full of tenderness and love. He only had Ren Zime as his family. All along, what he had hoped for the most was to help Ren Zime find a good man. As long as Ren Zime was happy, everything was fine. Although he knew that this decision was impulsive and irrational, he still made the decision. Most of the time, humans were still emotional. If they could maintain their rationality all the time, they wouldn't be human anymore. Chapter 41:21. After making their decision, Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei no longer hesitated and immediately rushed in the direction of the Yuanli movement. Qian Feilong and the rest caught up to Chu Jinfeng only to find that he was alone. They could not help but frown. They did not expect him to play such a trick at such a time. You're quite self-sacrificing, aren't you? You'd rather die to protect them? Qian Feilong stared coldly at Chu Jinfeng, his eyes filled with icy, murderous intent. He hated Chu Jinfeng to the extreme. If it was not for this damned bastard sneak attack, he would not have been injured. Chu Jinfeng's face was gloomy and his eyes flickered with intense hatred. So what? Do you think I'll be as cold-blooded as a despicable and shameless bastard like you? Humph. Qian Feilong snorted coldly. Do you think you'll be able to buy enough time for them? This training ground is so big. If they want to escape to the teleportation formation, it won't be done in a short time. In this time, it'll be enough for us to catch up to them. When that time comes, they'll still be on the road to death. Looking at Chu Jinfeng's fearless look, the malicious light in Qian Feilong's eyes intensified. Originally, I only wanted to give you a quick death. However, your actions just now have thoroughly angered me. So, I've decided to let you experience what it means to live a life worse than death. Hearing Qian Feilong's words, Chu Jinfeng could not help but frown. He asked, "What do you want to do?" "What I want to do?" Qian Feilong noticed the change in Chu Jinfeng's expression and the smile on his lips widened. "According to my judgment, you should like the woman who came with you very much, right?" Chu Jinfeng's expression changed slightly. "Why are you asking this?" In fact, he knew in his heart that although he had purposely changed the direction to buy some time for Ren Zimei and Chu Jinfeng, it was still unknown whether he would succeed. "What do you think is the most painful way to make a woman suffer?" Qian Feilong's smile became even more wretched and smug. The two cultivators behind him also laughed evilly. Seeing this, Chu Jinfeng's expression suddenly turned ugly. He immediately charged towards Qian Feilong. "You despicable and shameless fellow." Qian Feilong sent Chu Jinfeng flying with a punch and said disdainfully, "You want to protect the woman you like with your little strength? Dream on. After we kill you, we'll send those two people to accompany you. It's just that woman might be a little late. After all, she's quite pretty." Chu Jinfeng's eyes turned red. He felt that Qian Feilong might really do such a thing. Whenever he thought of that possibility, he wanted to tear this fellow before him into pieces. Even so, he still couldn't vent his anger. "I'll kill you." Chu Jinfeng got up and charged at Qian Feilong once again, the sword in his hand stabbing at his opponent without hesitation. Boom! With a flying kick, Qian Feilong snatched Chu Jinfeng's sword and stabbed it into his body. "You good-for-nothing, you'd better meet the king of hell as soon as possible." As the sword pierced his body, Chu Jinfeng's eyes widened. However, his hands were still wrapped tightly around Qian Feilong's leg, refusing to let the latter leave. Chapter 41-22. Qian Feilong and the others originally did not put Chu Jinfeng in their eyes, but after seeing Chu Jinfeng's stubbornness, they could not help but frown. This guy is really crazy. Qian Feilong looked at the guy who was hugging his legs tightly, and a trace of disgust flashed in his eyes. "What a hateful guy. I'll let you die a quick death." Qian Feilong took out his weapon and immediately prepared to stab Chu Jinfeng. This kind of annoying dog skin plaster, he had to get rid of him completely. When Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei rushed back, they saw this scene, especially when they saw Chu Jinfeng vomiting blood and still hugging Qian Feilong's legs tightly, not letting him leave. Ren Zimei's tears flowed down like a broken string of pearls. "Stop!" Ren Ziheng shouted loudly. Hearing Ren Ziheng's voice, Qian Feilong could not help but turn his head. After seeing that Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei had actually returned, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. "Oh, I didn't expect you to be so loyal. Actually coming back at this time, just in time to save us a trip to chase you." Qian Feilong's face showed a trace of a satisfied smile. He might as well take advantage of this time to catch them all in one fell swoop, saving him a lot of effort. After seeing that Renzime and Renzime had actually returned, Chu Jinfeng's face flashed with a strong sense of surprise, and then said absent-mindedly, "Why did you come back?" He had done everything he could to buy some time with great difficulty, but Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei had returned. Didn't that mean that everything was in vain? Jinfeng. Ren Zimei looked at Chu Jinfeng with tears in her eyes. She clearly noticed that Chu Jinfeng's waist was constantly bleeding. Her heart was in so much pain, and it seemed that her whole person, even breathing, had become incomparably difficult. "You are too stupid." Chu Jinfeng sighed. His whole person looked unusually helpless, but his eyes could not help but redden. Ren Ziheng looked at the miserable Chu Jinfeng in front of him, and when he looked again at Qian Feilong, his eyes were also surging with hatred. "It's all because of these hateful guys. Jinfeng, even if we have to go underground together today, with us accompanying you, you won't be lonely." Back then, the three of them had been traveling together. Even if they went underground, the three of them should continue to be together. The corners of Chu Jinfeng's eyes gradually became moist. He hoped that Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei would be able to leave safely, but after seeing them return like this, he couldn't help but feel moved. "Papa!" Qian Feilong clapped his hands with a smile and pretended to be moved. What a scene of brotherly affection. It's really touching. The other two cultivators could not help but chuckle. A weakling would always be a weakling. The affection shown at this moment was nothing more than a joke in their eyes. Evil is doomed to destruction. Qian Feilong, you'll die a miserable death in the future. Ren Zimei's eyes were cold and ruthless. A bone-deep killing intent surged in her chest. The guy in front of her was the person she hated the most. Qian Feilong chuckled. "You don't have to worry about whether I will die miserably in the future. However, today all three of you will die in my hands. Attack!" Qian Feilong waved his hand, and the two cultivators behind him immediately drew their weapons. Chapter 41-23. Ren Zimei and Ren Ziheng were the first to step forward. The two of them were now completely surrounded by hatred. If they could, they really wanted to chop these fellows in front of them into minced meat. Qian Feilong looked disdainfully at Chu Jinfeng, who was sprawled on the ground, and said, "You're now at death's door. I'll give you a chance to see with your own eyes how they'll die to save you." This sentence undoubtedly pierced Chu Jinfeng's heart fiercely. If it were not for him, Ren Zimei and Ren Ziheng would not have rushed back at a time like this. Even though they might not be able to escape successfully, even if they escaped, at least they still had a slim chance of survival. However, they had given up this slim chance of survival for him. Bang, bang, bang. After Ren Ziheng and the others exchanged blows, the two of them unleashed their strongest battle prowess. Perhaps the hatred in their hearts was too strong, so when they exchanged blows, their auras were extremely shocking. The two cultivators had originally been very disdainful of Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei. However, after this exchange, they had no choice but to put away their contempt. This was because under such circumstances, if they were even the slightest bit careless, they could really capsize in the gutter. Although Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei were not considered top-notch experts in Penglai Palace, they often trained, and their combat power was definitely not weak. What's more, the two of them were brother and sister. The tacit understanding between them was amazing. Boom! Under the combined attack of Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei, one of the cultivators was sent flying. Blood flowed from the corner of his lips. Qian Feilong could not help but frown when he saw this. He had thought that the two of them would be enough to deal with Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei. He never thought that they would be the ones to teach them a lesson. His expression instantly turned very ugly. When Chu Jinfeng saw that Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei were actually able to defeat one of the cultivators, his eyes flashed with joy. Ren Ziheng and Ren Zimei looked at each other, but they did not feel very happy about this situation. This was because they knew very well that even if the two cultivators were dead, they would not be able to deal with Qian Feilong alone. Everything that they had done now could only be said to be a little bit of payback. As long as they could make the other party unhappy, they would be happy. Two pieces of trash. Qian Feilong looked at his two teammates with dissatisfaction. Their cultivation was clearly not weaker than the other parties, but they still lost. How embarrassing. After being reprimanded by Qian Feilong, the faces of the two cultivators turned very ugly. However, when they thought about how much stronger Qian Feilong was than them, they could only swallow their anger, even if they were unconvinced. Since they can't get rid of you, I'll have to do it myself. Qian Feilong slowly unsheathed his weapon and looked at Ren Ziheng and the other man in front of him. I didn't expect you two to have some ability in your last desperate struggle. However, in the face of absolute power, you two are still no match for me. Seeing that Qian Feilong was prepared to personally take action, the expressions of Ren Ziheng and the other man turned grave. Zimei, be careful, Ren Ziheng said. Ren Zimei nodded. Big brother, even if we lose our lives in the end, as long as we can get back some interest, that's good enough. Chapter 41-24. Qian Feilong found it laughable when he saw the two of them giving it their all. If their cultivation was not high enough, it would be useless no matter how hard they tried. They could only blame themselves for not working hard enough in their cultivation, which caused their cultivation to be inferior to his. Ding, ding, ding. Unfortunately, they'd already realized that Qian Feilong's strength was extremely powerful at the instant they'd fought against him. Merely his strength was already not something that they could contend against. The gap between the Starlight Realm and the Purple Realm was like a chasm that could not be crossed. Bang! Qian Feilong slammed his palm on Ren Zimei's body, and she fell heavily to the ground. She could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. The air was filled with the faint smell of blood. Seeing that Ren Zimei was injured, Chu Jinfeng and Ren Ziheng could not help but call out, Zimei! In the next moment, Qian Feilong attacked Ren Ziheng. He kicked Ren Ziheng's body several times in succession, causing Ren Ziheng's body to fall heavily to the ground, leaving a long trail on the ground. Qian Feilong stood up straight and looked at Chu Jinfeng and the other two who were all on the ground. The disdain in his eyes grew. A bunch of laughable trash. He clapped his hands and felt that it was as easy as blowing off dust. Ren Zimei struggled to get up. However, her internal organs were in so much pain that she could not even get up. Qian Feilong turned to look at Chu Jinfeng and said, Haven't you always wanted to protect this woman? Then I'll kill her first and let you have a taste of pain. Chu Jinfeng and Ren Ziheng's expressions changed when they heard this. Ren Zimei's face turned pale as well. At this moment, she felt that death was very close. Qian Feilong held his sword and slowly walked in front of Ren Zimei. Ren Zimei could not help but step back. Unfortunately, she could not move much in her current state. Qian Feilong stood still and looked at the emptiness in Ren Zimei's eyes. He could not help but chuckle. Don't be afraid. It won't be long before they join you. Ren Zimei stared at Qian Feilong in front of her, and her gaze gradually became firm. Big brother, Jinfeng, I'll wait for you underground. Qian Feilong, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Hearing Ren Zimei's words, Qian Feilong's face turned cold, and the sword in his hand stabbed out without hesitation. Die, Qi! Ren Zimei closed her eyes, but she did not feel any pain. On the contrary, she heard a groan in front of her. Ren Zimei quickly opened her eyes and looked in front of her. She didn't know when Ren Ziheng suddenly stood in front of her. Qian Feilong looked at Ren Ziheng and frowned. You're really in a hurry to die? Do you think I won't kill her just because you're standing in front of her? Big brother. Ren Zimei looked at Ren Ziheng in horror. Her heart felt as if it had been squeezed by someone, and even breathing became difficult. Big brother, how are you? Big brother. Ren Ziheng turned his head and looked at Ren Zimei beside him. His voice was pale and weak. Zimei, Big brother will wait for you underground. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.